slides. So Disability Without Poverty is a grassroots movement that is led by, with, and for disabled folks. And it came to exist in response to the speech from the throne, which happened in September of 2020, when the government announced the plan for a Canada Disability Benefit. And this has been needed for so long, and it's very much thanks to, I guess, the difficulties and the gifts of COVID-19. And, you know, I think that's the time where folks really got to see a sense of what it looks like to live a disabled life. And for many, the pandemic didn't really drastically change the way that we lived. Accessibility in the world has been challenging for so many reasons, but mainly, you know, financially. So yeah, our goal is to end disability poverty in Canada. And, you know, while the disability justice movement has been alive and well for decades, this was the first time that there was a really political like catalyst to like respond to what was happening immediately. So I think it was with the pandemic that really forced things to change in terms of the infrastructure of our society, how folks get together and connect with one another, do work with each other, support one another. All of a sudden, everything was forced to go online. And folks in disability communities have been doing that for a long time. But there's also a lot of people who don't have access to internet connections, phones, and the technology, or knowing how to use the technology. So yeah, so there's been quite a big gap there. And sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. I'll introduce my co-lead, Kate, now, and then we'll talk a bit more after I do that. Let's see if this clicker works. Yeah. Oh. Wait, are you doing it or am I? Oh, okay, great. So this is Kate. Kate is an experienced community organizer, facilitator, and advocate that has worked primarily in the realm of poverty, harm reduction, bloodborne infections, sexual health, toxic drug poisoning, and online community management. Peers have recognized Kate as someone connecting people for change. After almost a decade as a social worker, she knows that creating positive social shifts isn't something that can be done alone. Change making is a joint effort that should be led by people who are most impacted by the outcomes. After a long stint living in Kelowna, Kate now lives in the Comox Valley, territory of the Comox First Nations on Vancouver Island. And she grew up in a small island community off the coast of Prince Rupert. Sorry, trying to stay hydrated. And me, I mean, I'm here. My name's Nusha, and I spent a lot of time working one-on-one with folks in nonprofits, supporting folks one-on-one, like advocating and accessing resources, and just really found like it was a cyclical door. And I decided to shift gears more towards structural systemic change, so that hopefully people won't need resources as much because we'll have a good quality of life and a livable income. So I'm gonna take you now to talking about what the cost of living is like in BC, specifically in Vancouver, because that's where we are now. Great. So I want you to think about, if you can, what you think the monthly cost of these items are in living in Vancouver. So for a small apartment, say 500 square feet, that's like about a bachelor's pad. So it's kind of one main room. And for food and household items, such as toiletries or other supplies and livable goods, hydro, internet, phone, public transportation. So here is the cost on average in Vancouver right now. So, I mean, as you can see, most of it is going towards rent. But what this chart doesn't tell you is it's actually very hard to find housing even at that price. Like, that's a good price. Good, I say. So yeah, it's pretty stark, right? Like, people not only don't have the means, but the housing also just doesn't exist. And then we look at what is the quality of the housing, right? Like, I know I've lived in places with pests, you know, carpet that's been really awful for my allergies. Yeah, like, just so much like just a lack of access, you know, not having like even a washer or dryer and all of those things that would really, that are really essentials for many folks who are living with disabilities. Like, I know it is for me, and I didn't know until I moved into a place that did have that. So yeah, lots of folks, if they even have the access to this stuff, it's like, it's still not meeting the needs. And so this next slide. So this is showing how the average cost of living for a single non-disabled person, according to the numbers I just showed you in the previous slide, all those numbers, so rent, goods, hydro, all of those things, they add up to the average cost of living of $2,641. And currently, the disability assistance rate in BC is $1,358.50. And according to the provincial government, British Columbia's poverty line is $2,028. So yeah, I don't know how we're expected to survive, much less thrive, right? Like, if the basics aren't even being met, then like we don't even have that baseline of wellness, because it's hard to just survive. Sorry, just one moment. Mindful of time. Can you remind me when I started? What time? 10:40. Cool. Thanks. I just want to be mindful of time because anxiety makes me forget. So I want to talk about how living with a disability actually costs more, even if you were to have the same amount of money as a person who is not disabled. Just by being disabled, you have more costs of living. So some of those things might look like, So prescription drugs or even over the counter. If you are needing support to have prepped food for whatever reason that might be, energy, like physical capacity, space, and then delivery on top of that, those are extra costs right there. Lately, I've been seeing there's like a 25% fee on some of like the most popular sort of delivery options out there on top of your total cost. So if you have like groceries that you're getting delivered to you from one of those apps and it's $100, you're going to be paying $25 on top of that just for fees. And that's not including things like tipping the person who's delivering them or whatever that might be. So lots of extra added costs that people don't see on paper when it comes to disability. So things like insulin, syringes, test strips, catheters. Yeah, some folks need to have, supplies to be able to just do basic things that most people take for granted. And then additional transportation if you're needing to get support from for medical appointments that aren't close by as well. Oh, okay. So in Canada, almost 1 in 4 folks are disabled, and of that, 43% are living in poverty. And yeah, so lots of folks are there are a lot of people who are living with disabilities, and disability is one of those things where it can happen to you at any point in your life. It's kind of the largest marginalized or minority group that folks belong to in the world, and that can happen at any age, any time. And there are a lot of people who are living in poverty because all of a sudden they can't work. And not everyone should be expected to work, like our worth is beyond like capitalism and conforming to work in a job that isn't accessible to us, that isn't filling our needs, that is causing us harm. And the gap between folks who are working and are living with disabilities, so disabled folks who are working compared to non-disabled folks who are working, the difference in like income annually is $5,000. So it's not as big of a gap that it might seem on paper, but when you add up all of those additional costs on top of the regular costs of living, it is a huge disparity. So when the Canada Disability Benefit was, oh no, this slide is not correct. Okay, I will move ahead. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about the Canada Disability Benefit. So the Canada Disability Benefit was announced in September of 2020, and it was then introduced into the budget. And then we had that early election that happened in September of 2021. And after that, we didn't really hear about it again. We recently had the budget announced, and there was no mention of it, and no mention of the Canada Disability Benefit. So our national movement and our co-chair and chair, Rabia and Michelle, they spearheaded the e-petition that Mike Morris of the Green Party supported, and we had over 17,000 folks sign on in support to put pressure on the government to table the bill. And we know that this can happen quickly and quickly. We saw with CERB during the pandemic, the Canada Emergency Benefit that was provided at $2,000 a month was given immediately as soon as the pandemic happened. And still folks in BC were receiving the same amount of $1,358.50. And that was kind of the moment, I think, when the government really couldn't ignore what was happening, because all of a sudden Canadians recognized that this was a huge discrimination. And so they came out with the Canada Disability Benefit bill that hasn't been tabled yet, and we're still waiting. So we commissioned a survey through Angus Reid, and it shows that, you know, Canadians are in favor of this, disabled or not. They believe that it's a basic right that everyone should have, and they believe that the proposed 3-year timeline is too long to wait. So in terms of connection, what does that look like? Well, I mean, we saw the world connect globally through the internet during a time of isolation during this pandemic. So despite being insulated in our homes, all of a sudden, folks were meeting people from all around the world and connecting and participating in ways that they may have not had access to before. So for example, like attending workshops or conferences, or attending like an art class or something, all of a sudden folks now had access to that wouldn't have been able to do otherwise because of either financial cost or transportation or you know, language or different forms of learning, different mediums. So as soon as livelihood and income was tied to accessibility, all of a sudden it became a priority. And we're seeing already now, as the pandemic has been shifting over the last couple of years, and especially in the last few months, things are starting to open up again, and things are resuming back to in-person, kind of like they were before. And I think I think it's really important for us, and I'll speak for myself, to hold on to that. You know, I want to continue making our world a more accessible place by continuing to offer ways of connecting, like streaming this on Zoom or YouTube, like being able to connect with folks who aren't even in the same room. This is something that's totally feasible and possible, and we've been doing it throughout the pandemic, and it's something that we need to continue to do, because disability justice is about community. So this is a quote from Sins and Ballad, adapted work by Patty Burns, Disability Justice, a Working Draft. Given the isolation enforced by ableism and capitalism, many of us have often found ourselves as leaders within our various communities, yet isolated from in-person community with other disabled people of color or queer or gender nonconforming Crips. Many of us have found liberated zones online that celebrated our multiple identities. Disability justice is a developing framework that some call a movement. We are still identifying the we, touching each other through the echoes of each other's hopes and words. And I really, this quote really spoke to me because we've come a long way from our, fighting for disability rights through legislation. And I mean, we're still doing that by trying to ensure that folks have access to life by way of this Canada disability benefit. But it also speaks, I think, to, the intersectionality of things, right? Like it's not just disability alone, it's disability compacted with all of these other identities that each of us hold. And I think it's the disability justice community has been really powerful of like bringing folks together no matter their identities, and really trying to listen to folks and hear what ways might work. And that's what this movement is about. We want folks to join us and to talk about what we think the benefits should look like, right? So continuing to put pressure on the government, making sure that they are not forgetting about this and that they're prioritizing the Canada Disability Benefit, and also connecting with one another to continue strategizing on the work and to share the knowledge as well. So, movements and communities that are contingent upon our survival and our ability to thrive brings us all closer together. And this is an ongoing and ever evolving practice of how to make accessibility just and equitable, and a way that allows us to meet each other where we're at. So currently, oh, the slide didn't, okay, one sec. Okay. So just to wrap up, because I think I've been rambling a bit, what we're asking for folks to do today is to reach out to your MP. So reach out to your member of parliament, the person that whose riding you are a constituent of. They want to hear from folks who actually are living there. And we're asking folks to write to their MPs to ask them about the Canada Disability Benefit. And we have a resource on Disability Without Poverty's website. We have a bit of a letter template that you can just plug in online. And you can also check in with me or my co-lead, Kate, online. Here's our info. This is our link tree. So it has like all of our social media accounts, as well as links to some of the current projects that we have going on, press releases, that sort of stuff, but also the letter writing template is on there as well. And I really encourage folks to check it out and see what we've been up to. There's so much out there, and social media has been also a very cool way to connect with other folks that we might not otherwise run into if we're not in spaces like this today. So just leave you with that. Thank you for your time. And I hope that you check us out and join us in our movement today to make the Canada Disability Benefit happen now. Thanks.
Thank you to ConnecTra Society for this wonderful opportunity to bring our programs to the community. We are the Canadian Mental Health Association, the oldest mental health agency in Canada. We have 102 years. This is the Bounce Back program, which has been around for about 14 years. What is the Bounce Back program? The Bounce Back program is a CBT-based, cognitive behavioral therapy-based program. It's a self-guided program that help support people that are experiencing depression and anxiety. We can all probably at one point raise our hands that we have experienced anxiety along with depression at one point in our lives. Yes? Yes. Because we deal with so many situations, right? And often enough, you have found that at times in your life, you have coped well, right? You build strategies, you manage to create your own ways to deal with what you feel of circumstances. But sometimes it feels like it's too much, and you don't know how to operate, and you don't know how to deal with those situations, those life challenges. And we're constantly bombarded by problems, situations, life challenges. Sometimes we are not involved in the situation, but it had an impact on us, right? Whether it's a relationship with co-workers, whether it's family related, maybe it's a personal, or any loss that we experience. So there's no question that we deal constantly with situations that challenge us. So let's get into the next slide. Now, as I mentioned, it's a CBT-based program for people that are experiencing low mood, stress, or anxiety. Right? We work. I'm one of the coaches, Matt as well. What you do is work on the material that we provide. It's a free resource in all residents of BC. Ontario also has it. Winnipeg also has it. But it's a free resource for every BC resident. We can change the next slide. Okay, so there's just a quote of a testimonial of a participant that we cannot change what happened to us, right? We cannot even change the past. So many things are history and past that we still dwelling and we're thinking about it and we're still struggling. Unfortunately, we cannot change the past, but we learn with time and with help and support to cope with it, to see the past in a different light that doesn't affect me currently. So the program help to gather those tools that you need at that moment to move forward. To want to restore my life before these events happen, or these circumstances or current problems. We all have been affected one way or the other, even during COVID. For some people, actually, it was a positive thing because they were working from home, the kids were at home, the dog could be chaotic at times, but they managed to value the time, the family time, to do more things together. And for others, it was the opposite. For people that are experiencing anxiety or low mood, it was enhanced in some cases. So it was good that they reach out for programs like ours to get support, to get the tools, how to better cope at that. Okay, so this is what we start in this graph, right? So often enough, or traditionally, we even have physical symptoms, right? Because our bodies are very emotional. We experience headaches, clenched jaws, stomach problems. We have sleep disturbances, concentration, appetite changes, fatigue, pain. So among other things, they're manifesting, sometimes our body gives us hints what is going on, and they're all attached to what is going on. And we're going to see in a different graph later on how that connects. So we have the link between your practitioner, whether it's a nurse practitioner, psychiatrist, doctor. So they refer to us, patients or participants that might benefit of the program. Whether they're currently even going to counseling, whether they're currently taking medication, that's not excluded from the program. So what it does is, okay, people go to the doctor sometimes, and that's a good thing, that the participants share with the doctor, you know what is going on in my life right now, right? And I'm struggling. So the doctor, in the old days, or sometimes participants ask for medication. Now it's expanded, might need a medication, but also it's good to pair it with several tools, right? So they complement that approach. So we become that link to support participants that are experiencing mild to moderate symptoms of depression and anxiety. Next, please. So now, due to the need and see that the program is working well, now we provide the program to schools, not in the school, but participants that are 50 years old and older. And now counselors of any school can refer youth to our program as well. Or they can go to their doctor, right? We also have a self-refer way. So you go online and fill out all the information, provide the name of your practitioner, and we go from there. A member of our team will contact you and go from there and set your information session. Okay, so there's ways to go with the program. Next one, please. Okay, so this is a very interesting graph. For me, it's a key graph that is present in most of our workbooks, because we work with workbooks, right? So it's the participant, as we said before, is a self-guided, so we provide the materials, you fill in the blanks of materials, and our sessions is to debrief that, what they learn, how they're applying those strategies or those tools that the school provide, and then we set plans. So as part of the CBT, and you've heard of cognitive behavioral therapy, is pairing the knowledge with the doing. Often enough, maybe you have experiences, I know I need to do this, I know I have to do this, but it's so hard to do it. So, and sometimes we do feel stuck. So this program might help you to move forward with your peer, with your coach, to put that plan together. Okay? You know what moving forward could look like, or what you want. So this graph is the 5 areas of assessment. So area 1 is any event in your life, any situation, life challenge, problem that you might face, that has a ripple effect in these other areas. So area 2 will be what you think of it, what unhelpful thoughts, negative thoughts, whatever you want to call it, or worries, right? We say, I'm worried about this. Those are the thoughts that we have of this situation that we are facing, right? So how we perceive the situation. And those 5 areas is good and happen even when good things happen in your life. Think of when you get a raise at your job, or any good news, or not so good news, right? That you lost your job, that COVID affected you in different ways. So what we have, the thoughts that we have in the situation, could be more to the helpful part. So that's area 2. And because we have those thoughts, our feelings will just follow. Whether it's worry, whether it's anxiety, whether you feel depressed, whether you feel disappointed, angry, etc. Right? That's area 3. Area 4, as I mentioned before, our body feels it. If I have a problem with my boss or my coworker, probably my thoughts are, oh man, tomorrow I have to go to work. I feel my boss again. I need to ask that question. I don't know how to do it. So then this thoughts start coming in, and I'm worried. And guess what happened at night? I will have trouble sleeping, or I will have that feeling in my stomach, right? That knot, that response from our body, or headaches, etc. And the area 5 is where you ultimately do a lot. Whether it's avoidance, it could be we tend to avoid things, procrastinate, or we probably face the situation a certain way, right? So if you can see, we can all relate to that 5 areas, and it's a really good tool. I encourage you to try, or now to think while you're watching this slide, what situation you can process that way. And you can see the arrows will show you how interconnected all those areas are. So the minute you change one or work on one of those areas, the rest will also follow. Okay? Okay, maybe the next slide. So, the title said you can do it, make a plan. So we work, that's one of the other tools that the program has. It's called the planner sheet. As I mentioned before, doing, right? So that's what, whatever you have in mind that you want to do, this is it, right? And there's another sheet that is not there, but it's called the review. What went well, what didn't go also well about your plan, right? But in this one, so when you said, yeah, you know, I need to talk to my boss because I don't know how to do this part of my job, I don't know how to approach, then unless you do it, that anxiety will keep going up, right? Probably because you're facing a due date for that project. Just to give you an example. So the idea is that often enough we procrastinate or we avoid things because our plan, even though we have the best intentions to do it, is not clear and it's not realistic, right? It's like me telling you, I'm going to run a marathon, and you will say, Mary, look, great, good for you, but I don't tell you when I'm going to train or when it's going to be, you know, and I'll tell you details. But if I say, you know what, I'm going to start training a marathon in September, so therefore I'm going to start training jogging because, you know, I'm out of shape. I'm going to start jogging, and this is my twice a week, probably the afternoon after work. So now my plan is becoming more clear, and it takes shape. And what I'm going to set is a realistic plan. If it's twice a week instead of 7, it's more realistic, go for it. See what happens, right? When we're in a low mood, let's try to do the easiest task that you've been avoiding. Go for a walk. Even if it's just one round of walk. Maybe in 2 weeks, you're going to have 2 rounds, and so on, right? We escalate according to what we feel that is realistic. Now, also we need to think that if our plan is realistic, practical, and achievable. If it's realistic, most likely it will happen. Right? We have participants say, oh, I'm going to do the work. I'm so excited to start this program. I'm going to do 5 days a week. And my question is, great that you feel motivated. But 5 days a week, given your busy schedule, is that realistic? Maybe not. Okay, let's work on this realistic. And also anticipate that something may get away. Life takes place, kids, commitments, responsibilities take place that will take away that what you have for plan is not going to go according to plan. So you also anticipate, how can I work around it and I still manage to do my plan? Going along with the example I was giving, if I'm planning to do my jogging as a practice twice a week, maybe Friday was my designated day. Something happened, an invitation, whatever, something derailed my plan. I have to think of maybe the next day or later on. I need to catch up to maintain my plan, right? Because the plan is good for me and make me feel good, but I don't want to right away. But you get the idea that our plan, whatever that is, whatever restore your well-being, be worth having plans to reach that goal. So, we have the workbooks that are related to depression and anxiety, and some options as well. We have booklets for youth. They work on 9 booklets that they work. We also have the booklets for adults, especially when it's a concentration issue. Sometimes the booklets are the best choice. But also we have 20 workbooks in the regular workbooks. So we have topics like health thinking, we have overcoming sleep problems, we have overcoming avoidance and fears, how to deal with illness, worry and stress, low mood depression, etc. We have a lot of books that you can benefit from, and you are the one who chooses which books are more relevant to you. We have our program on average 3 to 4 months to complete, and we have our sessions that are between 3 to 4 weeks in between. So if you decide to get a printed copy of the material, then we send it, you work on it, and our session give you the chance to really go through the materials and really try to put it into practice, and then we debrief in our session. So we have that. So we have different languages. The program is in Punjab, it is in English, Cantonese, and Mandarin. What else? So because we have 4 to 6 sessions, we don't cover all the books, so that's why it's good that you choose the books that are more relevant to you. Also, we have the online approach. So you say, you know what? I have so much on my plate. I don't think I can do the coaching part or every 3 to 4 week session. So what if I want to work on my own pace? Great. We'll give you the access to the online material. You can work on your own pace. You can still take your materials. So we have another way. You want to reach where you are at. The coaching components is all over the phone. And there's confidentiality as well. Next one, please. Also, the list of the optional workbooks. Also, come to our the very first table when you come in is table 10. We have materials that we can more conversation, and if you have any questions about any of the materials to gather more information, please, we'll just happy to resolve any questions you might have. And this is the booklets. You can see there's different languages. The titles are eye-catching, right? But it really gives you the tools. And the key is that if you're open and ready for the program, it could work for you. I think that is the key for any approach of any program, right? Anybody can come and give you all the tools, but if you're not open and ready, then it might not work. But this is okay. You know, sometimes we do feel stuck, maybe not the right program, not the right time, right? So this is our program as an option. Okay, so this is patient eligibility. There's individual 15 and up, right? They will try to do a pilot for kids that are more 13 or 15. This is one of the works. The PHQ 9 is a low mood depression questionnaire that sometimes doctors do it before they refer the participants to the program, but we do it in the assessment session as well. So it has to be up to 21 score. Because if it is beyond that, probably because the program might not be the right program for you, right? No one is disappointed. Also, there's no risk of harm to self-followers. There's no significant misuse of alcohol or drugs. Does not have a personality disorder. Does not have manic episodes of psychosis in the past 6 months. So that's also common. Can engage with the concentrated materials. Concentration could be an issue, but still we can work together. If you say, you know, this is not at this point, I can't, and you know, we know our limits as well. And then in case of the youth, cannot be self-harming in the last 3 months. So It could be for yourself, it could be for somebody that you know could benefit from the program, or somebody that you care about. Grab the information from our table. I could be a program as an option for you. This is some stats. We have good reviews and good statistics on how the program works. It really benefits so many people. As coaches, we get to see session to session how the participants just grow. And when they finish the program, is neat to see that they feel more equipped. And what they came to do to the program is to learn to manage, not to get rid of the situation because life challenges will keep coming, but to be able to cope better. Now you're equipping yourself with tools that you did not have before, and to put it into practice, that is really neat to see. Okay, and this is just contact information. Again, please come to our table. We can answer questions that you might have. You can ask here, but I don't know if you just want to have a situation, just come approach us. We're here to help and support the community and to expand and to the knowledge that the Mount Flag is available free and for anybody. That's it. Well, thank you very much for your time. Any questions on this part, or you want to get a speech there?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming and listening to me chatter on for a little bit. I super appreciate that. So today we're just going to be talking a little bit about video game accessibility. So I just want to make sure that's working. It is, yay. So a little bit about me to start with. So my name is Alex. I'm a game designer, an accessibility consultant, and a mutant cyborg. The mutant part comes from my disability being caused by a genetic mutation, and the cyborg part comes from I have a titanium rod fused to my spine to correct scoliosis. So in the most literal sense, I am a mutant cyborg. I still haven't gotten my invitation to the X-Men though, and I'm very upset by that. Some of my favorite games, Portal 1 and 2, Thomas Was Alone, and everything Supergiant Games has ever made. So, what exactly is a game designer? So at my day job, I work as a game designer, and on occasion, when I tell people this, I tend to get a blank stare or a follow-up question somewhere along the lines of, oh, so you write code? Not exactly. How I explain it is that if you think of making video games like baking a cake, a game designer writes the recipes. There are people that specialize in knowing everything about ovens and people that are masters of frosting and fondant decoration. And if you're writing a recipe, you should at least know the basics of how those things work, but you're not necessarily getting your hands dirty yourself. Follow-up question to the tortured metaphor, and often inquiry by my caring mother is, does this make money? In short, yes, the video games industry makes frankly silly amounts of money. That isn't to say I personally am making a living wage because disabled, but to say that there is a very large pie to try and get a sliver of. And I've somehow gone to the end of my slides. Excellent. Where are we at here? So that didn't work. Why didn't it work? My clicker, oh, there we go. It just didn't like me. So on occasion, I still come across people who have a misconception that video games are primarily guns and explosions. Don't get me wrong, there are a tremendous amount of games with guns and explosions, but there are also a mountain of cozy charming experiences within the medium of games as well. Games like Stardew Valley, where you move into a town, renovate a small home, and plant and harvest crops. And now my clicker is being angry again. Or did that work? It did not. The clicker doesn't like me. No? Hello, tech support. We got it? Awesome. So, or games like A Short Hike, where you play as a tiny bird person who is on vacation on a small island. And as the name suggests, you go on a short hike. Or Unpacking, where you experience the story of someone's life only through unboxing their possessions and organizing the items throughout their home. What's particularly interesting about the game Unpacking for me is it allowed me to experience something I hadn't done before. I typically going through a move am filled with boredom and anxiety because I can't move stuff around and help out. And also I'm not able to like fiddle where stuff goes on shelves and things. So having a game where that was like the core experience was really cathartic. It was kind of lovely. Now we're going back now. Now we're going, there we go. Awesome. So with the theme of today's event being reconnecting, I thought it would be prudent to acknowledge the role that video games played in keeping people connected during the start of the pandemic. Playing a game like Animal Crossing, people were able to virtually visit each other, check in, and not feel as isolated. But here's the magical thing. Games have always connected people. Okay, I'm really having a very angry clicker. There we go. All right, so let me tell you a story. My first love was hockey. When I was a kid, all I wanted to do was play hockey with my friends. Unfortunately, skate attachments hadn't been invented for wheelchairs, and as far as I know, still haven't, and I wasn't able to play hockey with my friends. And I felt left out. I felt excluded. What I was able to do was play NHL 2003 for the original Xbox. I could have my friends over, and I could play game after game after game with them. And games leveled the playing field. Games allowed me to feel included. And that experience has always really stuck with me, that through games, I felt included. Now, despite video games being this medium that can be incredibly inclusive and empowering, sometimes they have frustrating barriers to play. For example, in my lived experience, I can be having a wonderful time in a game like Zelda Breath of the Wild, and then have my fun come to a screeching halt because the game wants to show off how cool motion controls are. So in this picture here, it's one of those like ball mazes where you tilt the controller and the ball has to go through the maze, which is real fun if you can do it, but not if it's forced upon you and you can't. Now, something like motion controls isn't the only barrier someone can experience to playing games, but before we get into that, a little disclaimer. So, maps lie to you. Much like the Mercator projection stretches out a map so that something like Greenland looks really big, about the same size as Africa, that's just not true. So with accessibility being a complicated subject, the following thing I'm going to talk about barely scratches the surface of that, and it's not strictly true, but it is helpful. So not true, but is helpful. So there are 6 categories where barriers can exist. There's low vision and blindness, colorblind, hard of hearing and deaf, strength and dexterity, cognitive, and emotional. So first up, there's low vision and blindness. A barrier may be players may be unable to differentiate between objects in the scene, and a potential solution to that is something like high contrast options. So a game that does an interesting job of this is a game called Eagle Island, where as you can see, the background is dimmed out and the objects within the scene are highlighted. Interesting thing I learned going through this. So the ability to read 20-point font at 20 feet is why it's called 20/20 vision. And the term legally blind refers to 20/200 vision or worse. So you're not able to read 200-point font at 20 feet away. I just thought that was interesting. So one of the frequent things within this barrier area is text size seems to be a frequent issue. So within a video game, being able to increase the size of menu fonts or narration or that type of thing. Next up is colorblind. So you may be unable to differentiate between colors. These are, I believe, called protanopia, deuteranopia, and tritanopia, respectively, based on what, I think it's cone in your eye has been affected. And a way to design around this with the game is to not solely rely on color as a means of player feedback. So a game, again, that does a great job of this is a puzzle platformer called Hue, where it primarily uses colors for its puzzles. And what they've done is also added a symbol with each corresponding color to be able to play the game. There's also the rare achromatopsia, where you see in pure black and white, which I thought was kind of cool. So, hard of hearing and deaf. You may be unable to hear auditory elements within the game, and again, using a variety of feedback channels to communicate to the player is a way to overcome that. A game like Fortnite does a particularly interesting job where they have a sound visualizer, where around your character within the game, you can see where noises are coming from within the game. When I talk about the variety of feedback channels, one of the more interesting ones that I think we can explore more as video game nerds is the use of haptics, which is rumbling the controller or giving feedback through vibrations in the controller, which I think is something that we can explore more. This also includes this barrier area, spoken dialogue and needing subtitles as a can of worms, which is an entire talk on its own that we do not have time for. But if you want to learn more about it, there's a very good YouTube series called Game Maker's Toolkit, which I've linked there, and that has a great breakdown on subtitles. So, strength and dexterity barriers. So this is primarily where my lived experience lies. So a barrier may be players may be unable to push all the buttons in a default configuration on the controller. And the solution to that is something like input remapping, where you're able to change what buttons on a controller or keyboard make what options, well, what motions, options, you get what I mean, doing the stuff in the game. At a high level, pushing less buttons while maintaining the same player experience. This also covers something like chronic fatigue, which is a fairly common barrier to overcome within games. That's not true. Barrier lived experience, something like that. So now we have cognitive accessibility. So this is a fairly broad area. This includes things like dyslexia, sensory overload, motion sickness, ADHD, neurodivergence, the autistic spectrum. A barrier may be a player may be unable to differentiate or may be unable to decide where to go or what to do. And a solution to this is prompts or waypoints to allow the player some hints or some guidance to be able to interact with the game. The game that does a really good job of this is The Last of Us Part 2, which, as you can see from the picture there, has a nice big chunky arrow to show where the player should be going. All right, and last up are the emotional barriers. So a player may experience themes or content that provoke strong emotional reactions. And the solution to that is to provide a heads up for when those may appear from the outset. So a game that did a really interesting job of this was a game called Grounded, where they have spider enemies within the game, which is a fairly common trope for some reason. I don't know, video game people like putting in spiders. But what they did was they had something that they call an arachnophobia slider, where you could reduce the number of legs that the spider enemies had within the game. I haven't actually talked to anyone who had arachnophobia to see if this helped them or not. But I thought that was a really interesting attempt at addressing something that may be, otherwise someone who, oh, this game has spider enemies, I don't want to play that, right? Open up your player base and be more inclusive. So, adding another ingredient to the game's accessibility stew, there is a disabled advocacy saying, nothing about us without us. And I think that is just as true for games accessibility as other forms of accessibility. When a barrier to experience may arise, I think the best way to fix it is to have people with lived experience in the barrier area offer feedback to game developers. This helps ensure that the solution being crafted actually helps the people being affected and solves the true problem that may be obfuscated within the complexities of creating software. So this led me to consultancy. So PlayAbility is made up of a diverse group of people with disabilities with lived experience in the various barrier areas that exist to play games. We offer a service to game developers where we playtest and provide feedback on areas of a game that may be unnecessarily challenging or impossible to interact with. Right now, we have barrier experts with lived experience covering strength and dexterity, hard of hearing and deafness, blindness, colorblind, emotional, and cognitive. And we are continuing to grow our team. Now, in addition to lived experience of barrier areas, there are also guidelines and documentation that exists for games accessibility. I like to call these resources the King Ghidorah of games accessibility. King Ghidorah being the three-headed monster that first debuted in 1964 and fought Godzilla. If it wasn't very clear, I am a giant nerd. Thank you. So, first up is the Games Accessibility Guidelines. This is a great introductory resource. It's broken up into 3 levels, basic, intermediate, and advanced. It's great for dipping your toes in and understanding the basics. This is a great place to start your journey for games accessibility if that sort of thing interests you. So then there are the Able Gamers Accessible Player Experience, or APX. This is a list of 22 design patterns. I can't stress enough, it has pretty pictures, which is tremendously helpful when you're trying to craft solutions of being able to have another way to think about design or think about ways to implement features. Is having a visual aid is sometimes helpful to get you thinking in a different way. So the pattern I've chosen to highlight here is one called flexible controls. So the idea behind it is if you offer multiple inputs to a game, so something like if you have keyboard support as well as a controller support, that will inherently be a more accessible experience. I highly encourage anyone who's interested in this kind of thing to look into, there's a 2-day training course offered by an organization called Able Gamers, which I think is particularly awesome. So then there are the Xbox Accessibility Guidelines, which they call ZAGs, because everything has to have a 3-letter acronym when you're working in accessibility. So this offers crunchy, in-depth information. So as a designer, you go, okay, cool, I have to have text in my game. How big should it be for it to be accessible? The Xbox Accessibility Guidelines got you. So they really break down the exact, pixel size per resolution. So if you have a 1080p TV versus a 4K TV, you need to have different text sizes. And this is very boring, but very helpful for people who make games. I agree. So, a quick point I also wanted to highlight is that these types of solutions to barriers don't just help people that are disabled. Inclusive design helps everyone. There's a concept within inclusive design of temporary and situational disabilities. So you may be facing a temporary barrier where everyone's asleep, you still want a game, and you would make use of subtitles and then muting your TV. Or you may injure an arm or a hand, but still want to game during recovery, and then something like button remapping may be helpful for you. Now, what's really awesome is it isn't just enthusiastic nerds like me working to move games accessibility forward. Xbox has done some really amazing work making hardware solutions like the Xbox Adaptive Controller. Essentially, the Xbox Adaptive Controller, which is a device that allows people to plug in buttons and switches, which may be better suited to their needs rather than a standard controller, like this one. Each button on the back of the Xbox Adaptive Controller has a 3.5 millimeter jack, similar to the ones you use for headphones. And what you're able to do is plug in adaptive buttons or switches and make a fully customizable setup so that if a standard controller wouldn't work for you, you're able to use that customizability to be able to still interact with games. Moreover, Microsoft seems to be eagerly supporting the project and ran a Super Bowl ad showing off the adaptive controller. Or at least they thought it was good PR. There are also places like the Game Awards that are working to push games accessibility forward. The Game Awards is like the video game version of the Oscars. So in 2020, they added a category for accessibility and made a commitment to keep highlighting accessibility in games going forward. Past winners include The Last of Us Part 2 and Forza Horizon 5. So The Last of Us Part 2 had some truly amazing accessibility features for a AAA game. The game has an extremely well implemented high contrast mode. As well, the game is fully playable for people with total blindness through described video and navigational assistance. There's also an option that helped me personally within strength and dexterity barriers I face within the game. There is an option where if you look down the sights on a gun, the game goes into slow motion, effectively giving you bigger timing windows in order to play through the game. And I can't stress enough how amazing this was for me. It really did make the game much more approachable for me, was much easier on my hands, and was just a small feature, but it really did change how I experienced the game in a positive way. I forgot to change slides. Hell yeah. All right. Another great example of games accessibility in action is Forza Horizon 5, which implemented American Sign Language and British Sign Language options for all cinematics within the game. So as you're playing through, if you get to a cutscene, the person pops up and is able to sign within ASL and BSL for all the cinematics, which is really lovely. So, as the talk is beginning to wrap up, I just wanted to highlight a couple more cool games that make great use of accessibility principles. First up, there are games that make use of primarily auditory experiences. There's a game called The Veil, where you play as a blind knight and have sword fights and adventuring while having no visuals on screen whatsoever. The game uses directional sound, and you have to react to that sound and it makes a really unique and engaging experience to sword fight only through listening to how someone's attacking you. It's pretty cool. Then there is a game called Blind Drive. This is a much more zany game where you're kidnapped and forced to drive a car blindfolded. The game makes use of binaural audio, where it shifts the sound from left to right in your headphones or speakers to communicate cars whizzing by you as you frantically try and dodge them. Finally, as I was doing my research for this talk, I stumbled across a game called Real Sound, which was an audio-only game that came out in Japan in 1997 for the Sega Saturn. I just thought that was really cool. So for all of you with your Sega Saturns, feel free to dust those off and give them a play. All right. There are also a few games that make use of eye gaze technology, where a camera can track where you are looking on the screen and move the character to match your eyes, making it so you don't have to use a controller at all. There are examples like Hyperdot, where you dodge an onslaught of hazards to a rhythmic soundtrack. In contrast, Before Your Eyes is a much more meditative game where you explore the memories of a person's life. You do this by looking around the scene, but when you blink, time shifts forward, giving you this lasting feeling that all things come to an end. So, I wanted to wrap up by reiterating how wonderful and empowering the medium of games can be. Games have the power to connect people, playing it together on a couch, or retelling an epic adventure you've had over a cup of coffee. All games have the power to bring forth these amazing moments. And that experience should be available to everyone. So I encourage everyone to go out and play more games. Awesome, that's my talk. Awesome. If I know I talked about a bunch of games and principles and stuff, the slides for this talk will be up on my Twitter if that's easier for you to go and check stuff, because I want you to play more games. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
What's the vision, or what are we helping celebrate? And it's to empower people really on their own journey. We say people with physical disabilities because that's our history. Sam Sullivan, we had a picture of him up there earlier. He's the founder of all of our programs. You might know that name from his political career, but long before that ever happened, he was a 19-year-old who had a skiing accident, and he was like, you know what, I have a different body, but I have things that I want to do. And everything that we try to do are things that are showcased through ConnecTra. It's about discovering information for yourself or opportunities or programs you can participate in. So hopefully you leave today with more information and you think, oh, I could do that. That's what we like to think about as a foundation, is what can you do? And focus on how we can help you do that. So we'll go to the next. And then, of course, we have quite a few societies to showcase within the foundation, right? And ConnecTra has been a great help in being the gateway to getting to know the foundation. That's why we have events like today. So you can not only understand what's happening within the Disability Foundation, which has these 6 separate societies, which you may have heard of before, or maybe you're a member of, but we also like people to know what's going on in the community. So within our own foundation, it's a really exciting time because all of the programs are up and running. Over the summer, we have the pleasure of working with summer students. Some of our BC Moss staff are actually Simon and Leaf are their names. And if you were to book a hike or a hand cycle, you would be going out with them. So the trail riders out there, we'll go to the next slide, and we'll get talking more about BC Moss and our individual programs. And there it is, our Black Diamond Trail Rider. So I always tell people it's not nearly as heavy as it looks. And again, it's about giving an opportunity. If you have a mobility challenge, whatever it may be, maybe it's muscle aches, or you've just come off a surgery, or you're in the midst of a rehab, but you know, it is supposed to be a warm, beautiful summer and you want to get out there, well, the trail rider can help you do that. And again, you can go hiking with Simon and Leaf, and we have some dedicated volunteers. And I'll just say from personal experience, the trail riders really helped me have experiences and get out of my chair that I otherwise wouldn't have had. Next. And you can see it's meant for everybody. So you might think, oh, that's a big vehicle. Is it meant for someone who's super tall? No, not necessarily. This is a picture taken at one of our kids' days. The trail rider is adjustable. It's meant for all different sizes. Sam himself is a really tall guy, over 6 feet tall. So, I mean, obviously we design it for taller people, but we have a seating insert. So kids go hiking, people of all different ages all use the one trail rider. Next. And of course, we're kind of, you've seen it today, we're trying to get back to normal, right? Post the heart of the pandemic, interacting with people. So you can see here, when this picture was taken, we only have one staff member, and he's the one standing behind the girl in the pink shirt. Everybody else was volunteers. So what we do on a hike, if you're interested and you're saying, well, who's gonna take me? So these are passionate people, they're therapy students, kinesiology students, and we believe with BC Moss hiking, the more the merrier, because then people can take breaks, you can take turns, you can make friends, and there's going to be some great hiking opportunities, nature guide-led hikes out of Pacific Spirit, etc. So hopefully you get to join, and you can do all this for only $10. Next. So this is the hike here. This is Lynn Canyon Suspension Bridge, and we're also doing that this summer. And I see my friend Ruben out in the crowd, out in the North Shore. And so I have to say, the suspension bridge holds a special place for me because this is the first real hike that I did way back in 2010. And this is what really helped me love BC Moss and love hiking, because I got to get out of my chair. And as we all know, we've all dealt with it over COVID. There's lots of sitting on your computer, and I got to be out in nature. Or if you have a mobility challenge and you're sitting down, what are we doing all the time? We're looking up, right? We have to look up. So out in the trail rider, you can look out over nature. You can look over a suspension bridge. You can be up on a hill. You can be out in sand. So like we talked about earlier, reimagine what's possible and get out there. Next. So now we won't expect you to do this all at once. You don't have to go to Everest or Mount Kilimanjaro, but we also rent the trail rider. So maybe you have a super adventurous spirit, more adventurous than myself, admittedly, and you're thinking, you know, I really want to get out there. Well, you can rent the trail rider, and it has been all over the world. Next. And this is the video. So that's a hike that I actually got to do. It was a number of years ago, and I'm going to be honest with you, it was raining when we were on the hike. So when you see me there, you're like, oh, was he nervous or was he sweating? No, it was actually just the rain, but the volunteers got a good workout. And I always say, if you want to get involved, it's a great way to to save on a gym membership. So you can see Quarry Rock's an awesome place, and that was a great experience that I got to take part in, and I'm thankful for the volunteers that helped me do that. Next. So not far from the Roundhouse here, just down the seawall, we have our paddling program. Super popular, and you might have seen the trail rider and thought, oh man, I'm along for the ride. I don't want to be along for the ride, I want to be more active. Well, you can certainly do that with our adaptive kayaks. Next. So even though you're along for the ride, safety is the utmost importance. Our Tetra volunteers will speak more about that later. They help us modify the kayaks so the seats are widened so you can get into it. It's got pontoons, and you can see the gloves are being demonstrated. So even if you can't make a fist, the gloves clip onto the paddle. Our staff is super excited to help you have the experience. And again, it's about your own journey with being out there on the water. You don't have to go super fast. You can be on the water for an hour or less. And again, all of this is $10, so super affordable. And we have 3 staff members with paddling that would love to help you get out on the water if that's something you'd like to do. So we'll go to the next. Along with the kayaking, we have paddleboarding. So the paddle boards are made like this, and we also supply the wheelchairs. So there is a weight limit on the paddleboard, and it doesn't work with the power chair, but you would be in this chair, there is safety straps, and you can, again, paddle, and it's a different way to interact with nature and on the water recreation. Next. So that's just kind of an up-close shot there. And again, you can paddle, the paddles are about 1.5 pounds, so they're not that heavy. We'll go to the next. And if the weight ratio is correct, you know, we're happy to help you. Staff is always right next to you as well. So it's a social experience. You'll never be on your own, and we're all about safety first. We'll go to the next. And then here's a brief little paddling video, I believe. So as you can see, you can have different levels of ability. You can either have somebody help you paddle, or you can paddle yourself. So our staff will do everything we can to make it as enjoyable as possible. Next. So also with BC Moss, we have personal training. We're currently in a new cohort, we call it, and this is where you can get online and do your fitness programs. And through Connect Together as well, Megan does a series of personal training as well. So that's personal training. If you want to know more about that, we can provide you more information. Next. And then you might have seen here today, we have the hand cycle. So in Pacific Spirit Park, during the week, we offer hikes. We've talked about the trail rider. We also have our hand cycle as well. And we have Simon and Leaf. And if you get assessed by therapists at GF Strong, then you can try out our hand cycle and pedal at your own pace in Pacific Spirit Park. Next.
All right, so I'll talk a little bit about ConnecTra. So obviously we're here today because ConnecTra is putting on Abilities Expo, but I'll talk to you a little bit about the programs that ConnecTra runs. So the first one I'll talk about is our community workshops. As you can see here, this was right before the pandemic, but these workshops we are starting to do again in person. We've had one so far, which was on employment and empowerment. The next workshop is tentatively scheduled for July 18th. And just to give you an example of some of the programs that we've run or workshops have been around accessible travel, the Registered Disability Savings Plan. We've had presentations from the Disability Alliance, and as well as adaptive recreation. So right now, and we've had this on since 2020, but Connect Together is ConnecTra's online programming. We feature such programs as adaptive yoga, which will actually be having a presentation today at 2 p.m. out in the main exhibition hall right after this presentation, I believe. As well as adapted fitness with Megan Williamson. There have been some global workshops, a global workshop series with Jordan Mara, which is in partnership with DIGA, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And also right now we're running a creative writing class with Emily Giuseppe, and much more programming. And that's also weekly programming that runs Monday to Friday online. And you can find that at connecttogether.org or on ConnecTra's Facebook and the Disability Foundation YouTube channel. So yeah, moving right along. So we also run what is called our accessible community forums. And what this program is it aims to cultivate a conversation between various organizations in our community of people living with disabilities. Previous ACFs have included conversations around accessible parking, where the Disability Foundation and ConnecTra partnered up with Spark BC to deliver content during the International Persons for Disabilities Day. We have also talked about built environment and accessible transportation. And again, much like all of Connect Together's programming, you can find those videos on the Disability Foundation YouTube channel. Our next ACF will be on July 29th as well. And last but definitely not least is Abilities Expo, which we are all joined here today. This is ConnecTra's flagship event. This is our first one back since 2019. And yeah, again, at the end of Abilities Expo, we will be sending out a survey. And if you wouldn't mind responding to that just to see how we could better run the event. So we are now going to talk about the Disabled Independent Gardening Association. So the Disabled Independent Gardening Association was started up in 1987 originally, and then the Disability Foundation took it over. We run out of 7 different community gardens within the Lower Mainland. That would be Still Creek, Woodlands, Pandora Community Garden. We've just opened up one at GF Strong Rehabilitation Center, and as well as Kerrisdale. And we also run, the last 2 would be out of Maple and temporary garden at Granville and 8th. And just to let you know, at this time, we do have, I believe, 4 community plots still available. 1 at Still Creek, 2 at Woodlands, and 1 at GF Strong, and a final 1 at Kerrisdale, if you are interested. So the photo that we see here is our raised garden beds. As you can see, these have been adapted so that it allows a wheelchair to go underneath. These were designed by Tetra volunteers, and we do have various beds to accommodate different people with different disabilities. As you can see here, we have one of our clients using some adapted tools. This one is actually available commercially. However, we also work with Tetra volunteers to adapt tools to anyone's specific needs, but just to assist in helping in the garden, in your gardening. We also work very closely with one-on-one volunteers throughout the summer. And as you can see here, they're working out of Woodlands in that right photo. But yeah, no, without our volunteers that come and help support us, we wouldn't be able to be as successful with running our programs. So thank you to them. So DIGA also runs workshops. At this time, most of our workshops have been run through the Connect Together programming, that global workshop that I mentioned earlier with Jordan Mara. But we also will start be doing in-person workshops this summer again. Some of them will be on rare plants, new ones on specifically lavender, and different, our latest workshop will be on certain seeds and what you can grow in the summer, say, versus the winter. So this is a very exciting project that was started in 2019, and this year is the first time that we've been able to really go in and use this. This is the new community garden at GF Strong. So as you can see there, there's Shireen Pasco on the left, who will be joining us on June 1st as the program coordinator with DIGA. And there's another example of the different garden beds that we have available as well. Now, another exciting project that was started in 2020 is our home gardening project, or SIP, self-irrigating planters. These, again, were designed by Tetra volunteers, and we've now refined it. So as you can see on the left, those were our first garden beds. We originally did a run of 6, which have all been claimed, but we are now doing, refined it so that version 2.0 that you see on the right. And so we've done the first prototype of that, but again, with the help of a Tetra volunteer, we're starting to put these into production. So if you are interested in gardening at home, please reach out and we could potentially help you get one of these. And the last thing with DIGA is our Growing Together podcast. Our first initial one was done in 2021, and it was in partnership with Ingenuum Museum, which is based out of Ottawa, out east. And we will be doing a second version of this podcast coming out in 2022. And this first run was originally around food security and what that looked like, but it was a 7-issue series that focused not only in BC, but across the country. And that can be found on diga.org.
All right. Lots happening with DIGA, and lots is going to be happening out at Jericho Beach. Now, if you've sailed with us before, you might be wondering, when is the program starting? So that's going to be June 3rd this year. It's a little bit later because nobody can beat Mother Nature, right? It's been a wild year with weather, so if you go down to Jericho, you might see some scaffolding or some repairs being done to the building, but we are still sailing. We'll go to the next slide. And our boats are as safe as ever. So it's the Martin 16, and if you're sailing for the first time, you might say, do I need to know how to sail? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I have worked with ASA for a long time, and I still don't know how to sail. And the reason is because when I sail, I like to go for the fun of it. I like to literally be along for the ride. So I'm the definition of what's considered a recreational sailor. So I want to have fun and that kind of joy. So as you can see in the picture, you can have fun. We supply the life jackets. Unless you're really, really small, it is meant for 2 people. We'll go to the next slide. And the bottom of the boat has a weight on it. It has a weight of about 350 pounds. So it's built so it's not going to tip. And we'll supply all the life jackets and make sure that you're comfortable in the seat. And then I always say, earlier today we heard people talk about video games. Well, if you like video games, you could learn how to sail our boats because it runs on a joystick. So you can see in that picture, hopefully there's a silver joystick there. And if you have some hand control, you can move the boats. We'll go to the next. And even if you weren't able to use your hands at all, you could sail on Sip and Puff. Some of you might have seen Sip and Puff operating wheelchairs. But we can also do that with our boats as well. So it's the person that's the Sip and Puffer always tells me it's pretty intuitive, right? So you sip in, so if you imagine, so let's say we're drinking a big milkshake, right? Well, when you sip in to drink the milkshake, so this time you're in the sailboat, you're going to sip in, you're bringing the sails in, and then when you take a breath or you puff, you sip and puff, you puff, the sails blow out. And any sailor can tell you, you got to sail with the wind. So it is a great skill. And I have seen this individual here, Terry, sail and compete against able-bodied sailors and win because he knew how to operate the boat. He knew how to go with the wind. So whatever your physical ability is, whether you want to learn to sail, we'll go to the next slide, or you want to challenge yourself and discover a way to race. So here's all of our boats out at once. This is a regatta. So we have racing on the water. Jericho helps set up the race course. We have a safety boat, and then you can go back and forth and you compete against one another. But again, you kind of have to learn the boat first, and you start out with the recreation, but our program gives you a chance to develop your skills. And again, that'll be happening starting June 3rd out at Jericho Beach. We'll go to the next slide. And if you're wondering what it looks like, I think we have a little video as well. So it's not the fastest boat, but as you can see, you can get some pretty good speed up on the water, but all the while being safe. So we're going to go to the next slide. Graham's already talked about Tetra, and thanks, Graham, for the plug. So we'll go to the next. So Tetra is our national program, and again, what we really want to do is help people on their own journey. The unique thing about Tetra is everything that we do comes from you, comes from our members. A lot of the, like today we planned this event ahead of time and we said we want to offer this to the community. Well, with Tetra, we'll keep going through the slides. Basically, every device that comes in, and here we are Canada-wide, people tell us what they need. And so what Tetra is about is customized devices built for you, because sometimes you have a challenge and we need a way to figuring that out. So we have volunteers. Some of our volunteers are here today and are in the crowd, so hopefully I'm representing us well. But we have volunteers who make the devices. They could be mechanical engineers, electrical, sewers. What they all share, they have different backgrounds, but what they all have in common is a desire to problem solve and a desire to work with individuals to remove barriers and overcome challenges. We'll keep scrolling through. And it could be for at-home use. So one of the devices, it's a modified table. It's on wheels. It lowers with her right into the fridge. The other picture was to help a lady do flowers. She has the use of one side of her body. So this is designed so that there's holes on the top and it enables her to arrange her flower arrangements. It's like having an extra hand. We'll go to the next. So, and again, if you're like, oh, I'm not sure what I need. Well, you could go to our online database. Think of this as like an Amazon of customized devices. So our volunteers have helped post this, or our staff, and you can read about it and then discover what might work for you. Next. I just put this in because, again, this comes from you. So you can fill it out in the privacy of your own home. If you struggle with typing, myself or one of our staff will help you fill it out. So it's a request for assistance. Basically, you are sharing with us the barrier that you would like to have removed, and then you can meet with one of our volunteers one-on-one. And it is basically by donation. So the devices created are free. So if you're saying, I'd like to have help, but what's the cost? There is no cost. Our goal is the best way you can help us, we'll go to the next slide, is if you've had a great experience with Tetra, tell our story. So I always like this picture because everybody needs to communicate. Everybody uses a phone. And I always like to say, we can't buy you the wheelchair or we can't buy you the phone, but we can design a way that you can hang on to your phone, right? So I know it's a challenge for me. If I drop things, you can see here, our volunteers work really hard to try and design something with your own environment. So if you use a chair or a mobility device, you might want something modified there, or it could be within your house. We'll go to the next. We, of course, all different ages. We love to do devices for kids, music class, school. So it could be, Tetra again is any aspect of daily life. So for this, it was a modified recorder, so it's easier for him to hold on to. And it's kind of supported around his neck because he only had the use of one hand. So this way he didn't have to worry about dropping it, and he could fit in with his music class. Next. People ask, how has Tetra changed over the years? Well, definitely we've already seen ways to, with the cell phone, we have a table out there, we have our NetClay device that helps you connect with the computer. And certainly we've seen an increase on devices for parents with disabilities. So you're probably aware with the difference of a manual chair or a power chair. So here are two different designs, one for the power chair, one for the manual chair, but the goal is the same. Mom and baby are face to face and going out on walks or strolls together. Next. So, and of course, here is an adaptive crib, and it's been modified. I think we'll scroll to the next slide. There's a video, you'll hear about this project from the client themselves.
I applied to Tetra initially because my son was gaining a pound a week for a little while. It was causing a lot of strain on my back. Being able to reach him all the way down at the bottom.
So I don't know if the sound is coming through, but you can see, you'll see the crib, it's been modified, so I'll kind of narrate here.
But for me,
So obviously, when you're in a wheelchair and you're sitting down, you can't stand in to reach over top of the crib. So that's not overly safe. And so what they did is they modified the crib so that it's got a guard on underneath. And then you'll see in the pictures, the mom is able to reach in and then access her child, and it's safe. So you can see how the doors open up, right? If you can't stand up, then you can open the doors that way. And the volunteers are talking about how they raise the crib. So that's the other thing, is our volunteers work together. I was talking with Ruben earlier today, and he said, who can I consult with on this project? So the more minds you have coming together leads to great problem solving. And so the volunteers, they have their own workshops, and you can see they built a guard for the crib. And then again, the baby is safe because the locking mechanism, of course, is on the outside. And we're not changing the widths of the bars, so there's no safety hazards. We're just making it so it's easier to open up.
Without having to worry about my back hurting. It's just affected our lives a whole lot.
And she's talking about it saving her physical strain and increased independence. And then the second project was, as you'll see, to be able to go out for rides. Her child was getting heavy on her lap. It was making her legs numb. And of course, you want to make sure that the baby is safe. As kids get excited, they can get squirmy. I know from personal experience of trying to hold my nieces or nephews. So it's always good to have a safe ride. So the volunteers designed it so that her son sits out front. And as you can see, the baby's supported, the weight ratio is correct, and the mom can go out and wheel. And then they're out independently, out in walks. And she's just talking about how much her son loves the ride and he doesn't want to come out. Okay. So that's just one example of the project. There is more available on our YouTube channel if you want to see other videos. We'll keep scrolling through. Tetra lights. I have this, if you're wondering what it is on the side of my chair, it runs on a lithium battery. It's on LED. And so like when it's dark in here, you can really see it. So if you imagine when I head home and it's darker, so those are available online, and you can change the color, and you can see you don't have to be a wheelchair user. There's different applications, and you can have the side strips as well. Next. Okay. And we have, just to show the diversity of our volunteers, we have students as well. So you could be working with the next generation of engineers, and the challenge that you have could help them develop their skills. Next. Let's skip this slide, Graham, I think, because we have Annette Clay in person. So we'll just skip that. Annette Clay is to help you use a computer. You can see it in real time out at our display table. But just to save time, to make sure we're on time. So lots is happening with Tetra. Again, we do have chapters and do projects as well throughout the Lower Mainland. If you're wondering if it's just Vancouver, no, it isn't. North Shore, Tri-Cities, and Tetra is happy to help out our other societies as well. So I'll turn it back over to Graham to discuss VAMs.
Thanks, Eric. And I did get the 5-minute shot from Emily, so we will quickly go through the Vancouver Adaptive Music Society. But if you have any questions about this program, please either find myself or Bryden Vino, who's located on the side, and he's the program coordinator with the Vancouver Adaptive Music Society. So the Vancouver Adaptive Music Society has a 3-tiered program that we like to primarily focus on. The first one being in studio, and where we give lessons. We also give lessons virtually and online. And the studio is located at GF Strong Rehabilitation Center. We offer lessons in guitar, bass, piano, drums, recording techniques, and also special instruments on request. As you can see here, this is our mobile studio, and we actually brought one today. It's outside, right beside the Disability Foundation booth. And essentially what the mobile studio allows us to do is deliver our core programs out into the community, whether that's group homes, community centers, private events. We are able to take this and be mobile with it. Obviously, with the Vancouver Adaptive Music Society, we're here to make music. This is shown here with our guitar table that was also designed by a Tetra volunteer. And leading into our second tier, that would be recording. So partially with the recording aspect, we have a new recording studio that we just reopened up at GF Strong in February, where we're done phase 1 of our construction, and we're fundraising currently for phase 2. And we like to pride ourselves on saying that we're the longest running adaptive music studio, recording studio in North America. We also, for our third tier, is performance on stage. This was taken back in 2018 at the BC Music Tech Conference, and that's Jeff Stanfield playing with Dave Symington, who was also one of the co-founders of the Vancouver Adaptive Music Society, along with Sam Sullivan. And yeah, no, that was just a performance that we were also playing in the Lower Mainland, whether that's also, we also play at various accessible venues, even such ones as the Roundhouse Community Centre. So our flagship event for the Vancouver Adaptive Music Society is the Strong Sessions, and I am very excited to announce that on October 6th of this year, at this space, we will be having our 5th Strong Sessions. We're currently building together the lineup, and I know everyone within the VAMS community is really excited to be able to come back and perform live again. During the pandemic, we started our virtual concert series. We still knew that our musicians wanted to, get their music out and perform and be connected with our community, and so we started up our virtual concerts. You can find these on the Vancouver Adaptive Music Society YouTube channel, and we have 7 released. Our most recent one was with Jeff Stanfield, and yeah, if you get a chance, check that out and like and subscribe, please. We also have an equipment loan and donation program. So we do take in playable instruments that we also give out into our community. So if you could reach out to info@vams.org, if say you have an old keyboard that isn't getting used, or maybe an old guitar, we kind of tune it up and then give it back out to our community. During the pandemic, we also started our podcast series. We have 2 currently going. One is called Discover Stories, which focuses just on the disabled community and life. And then our original one, which started the podcast, was our artist features. And again, those can be found on our YouTube channel and our Shoutcast channel. And yeah, no, it's, really interesting stuff. We have one on Dave Simonton and Sam Sullivan and what was the inception of VAMS. We have one with the president and CEO of Rolling Canada, who helped really help start the Vancouver Adaptive Music Society back in the 80s. But yeah, sorry, I'm just quickly moving along. And then, yeah, last but not least, the VAMS YouTube channel. So again, you can find that on YouTube under the Vancouver Adaptive Music Society. All right. So if you have any questions, I know Eric or myself will be out at the Disability Foundation booth, and you can also reach out to us as well via email.
We will be here throughout the...
Ryan Clarkson, he's here to talk to us about his solo road trip camping adventures and how he accidentally found his confidence.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you, everybody, for coming. So I'm pretty excited to have this chat, especially that we are coming up to June and it is camping season. So I'm going to go over why I got into camping, why I like camping, and because I have done so much of it, there's a lot of good and bad things that have happened to me, so I want to share both of those with you today. So yeah, why camping? Well, a little bit about me. I got injured in 2009 through a motor vehicle accident. And when I got injured, I just got back from backpacking Europe for the second time. Really love to travel. I took a job working road construction to save up money and go to Southeast Asia. So for me, no real skills at the time, no education. All I wanted to do was go travel. And then I suffer this motor vehicle accident, break my back, and then of course it's, well, I'm never gonna be able to do this again, I won't be able to do that, and how am I gonna travel? That was the big one for me. So I figured I would get into camping. It seemed like the safe thing to do. We live in BC, a lot of options. And before I went on my trip, I decided I was gonna go solo because I was very nervous. I didn't wanna go on a trip and then have to back out and ruin my friends or my family's time. So I figured, all right, I'll go by myself, and then if it doesn't work out, then it's just my own trip I'm messing up. So this is what the first trip I did right after my injury, and that was quite the undertaking. As you could see, I went up to the Yukon and back. And then from here, I've driven 160,000 kilometers by myself, roughly, all over everywhere you see. So those green dots are actually places I've camped for free, and the red dots are places that have a little fee associated to them. I do still mostly travel by myself. I fell in love with it. The first few times, or the first few nights of that trip, I almost was in tears because it was raining the whole time. It would take me 45 minutes to set up camp, and then all of a sudden you see a little bit of sunshine, and then you're addicted. I was hooked. So I still do a lot of camping with friends, but I do prefer to go by myself, and this is roughly where I'm at right now. And most of these spots I have visited multiple times. So am I really an inspiration? The reason I wrote that is because I would get that a lot, and at first it was flattering. Then it was also a little annoying because it's like I'm just living my life. And after I got injured, I would hear that quite a bit, where maybe I'm doing my laundry and someone's like, oh, good for you, you're doing your own laundry. And that's how I looked at it for this. And at first it's like, no, I'm just living my life. I love to camp, I want to camp. But eventually I kind of realized if I am inspiring people to do something like this, or just to kind of get out of their comfort zone, I'm more than happy to do that and fill that gap. So I get asked, where do you camp and how do you find nice spots? So this is one of my actually favorite spots. This is Black Rock Desert, all by myself, and I do have the pop-up tent there. So I'm sure anybody with a spinal cord injuries, they've worked with PTs, OTs, and they're always getting hassled. Protect your shoulders, protect your wrists, gotta be careful, preventative injuries. So I always have to do things the easy way. So I wasn't gonna be messing around with tent poles, so simple pop-up tents. And there you go, half my camp is set up already. Now it's time to move on to a beer and then throw in everything else. So simple as that. So where do I find campsites? research. Research is the name of the game. Especially when you're new to this, it's very important to kind of want to know where the good spots are. I've visited over 30 national parks, and you can't just wing it on a lot of those places. You got to know where you're going. So research is the big one. Things like going on Instagram, going on YouTube, or simply just Googling, hey, best places to camp in Utah, where are we going? So that's the biggest one. But for me, I love using Google Maps. So you get very good at researching after you have an injury and you want to travel again because you want to make sure things go smoothly. So for me, I just wanted to know, okay, I was comfortable going out. Now, how am I going to find these really cool spots and trips I could drive? So as you can see here, there's a big swath of open land with no roads in the middle. So what I would do is click on the little Google Maps guy. Next slide. And then you can see all the blue things that come up. So a lot of those are not just Google Street View cars, but they're people that went down these paths, stuck a camera on their car, and then just recorded it for the public. So I would see what looks like a path in the middle of nowhere. I would drop the little street map guy, and then I would find something like this and think, oh, wow, that looks pretty interesting, doesn't it? So somebody did me a favor. They put the camera on top of their helmet. They went down a nice path. They recorded it, and I thought it looked pretty cool. So I write it down in my map book, and then I go there myself, and this is my photo. And so research actually paid off, and I was able to see something beautiful like this. This was actually 2 years ago when COVID hit and we could not go anywhere outside of our province-ish. The Yukon did let me in, so it wasn't a big deal. But again, I've been all over the Yukon, and it's like, where else am I gonna go? So I pull that little street map guy out, and I see that somebody created this on the way to an abandoned mine. So I think, okay, it's pretty interesting, looks beautiful, road's not too bad, but what's that on the left? I see a little open patch there. So I investigate a little further, and it actually looks like a spot I can hitch my tent. So I like to camp for free. I like to camp in the middle of nowhere. So I marked that down on the map book, and sure enough, that's where I stayed. So I'm not cheap, but I like to save money. I don't like to spend a lot. So anytime I can go out in a remote spot like this, I take it up. I also like to listen to music loud. I like to play my harmonica. I don't like to listen to generators or other people's kids screaming as much as I do love kids. I do love going in the secluded areas, so that's one of the ways I do find it. So you can also go old school. Technology's great, but when you're out there, it's nice just to look at a map and figure things out. So I got atlases, map books, all sorts of stuff like that. I got pretty good at reading it, so I will just look at the map, look at an atlas, look at it and says, okay, that looks pretty good. Look out my window and think, all right, it goes in a ravine, it goes into a mountain, I should be good to go. So I also use the map books. And then this is combining the two. So I got a map book, I know an area I want to go in, but before I go online, I look at the street areas, and then I see, okay, so these are some good spots. As you see, I can mark it, some small spots, large pits, not too scientific, and that gives me an idea of what I'm looking at when I go into an area. And this was actually maybe 12 years ago, before GPS was more readily available in vehicles, so I used to actually draw my own maps. Been burned a few times thinking I drew an appropriate map, but you become pretty good at kind of preparing for these sort of things. And just winging it. So this is a road I took down in Nevada, and a lot of people think Nevada is just a desert, but it's pretty green. I do like to just know a general area, what it's gonna be like, and then just saying, okay, I'm gonna go down this road, we're gonna figure it out. But before we go, we wanna be prepared. So I now have a 5-day rule. I actually got a flat tire on a road I had no business being on, and I was lucky enough to get off that road and went into the closest town, got it fixed. And the mechanic there said I was very lucky because it was a Monday, and he said nobody would be on that road until the following Friday because it's an ATV road. So I could not wheel out. I couldn't call 911 because there was no cell reception. So guy said I would have been stuck 5 days. So now whenever I go into a tricky area, I make sure I have 5 days of water on me and supplies. So I can camp out, worst case scenario, for 5 days, wait for somebody to come, and then start waving my hands like a lunatic, and hopefully they stop and help me out. And you also want to be very prepared when you go in remote places, and you want to use that little bit of cell reception that you do have. So I get excited when I'm driving and I see, oh, I got 1 bar on my phone. I pull over and right away I'm looking up weather reports, I'm looking up road reports, and then you can see on the right, that's forest fire reports. I screenshot it all, and then I know, okay, if I go right, this is what I might look at. If I continue to go north, this is what I want to look at. So I know what the weather's going to be. I know that the road is bare, difficult, has narrow sections, rough sections, loose gravel, and soft shoulders. And then I know which way the wind's blowing for a forest fire. It's not about just knowing what you're getting into, but it's about the confidence once you're there. So I do like to just figure things out, but the more I know about the area, the more confidence I'm going to have in having a good time. So we're ready. Let's hit a random road and gamble with our time. So I'm prepared. I kind of know what area I want to go to. I got the water, I got the supplies, and now let's just figure it out. So a lot of roads try to scare you. This road not maintained beyond this point, travel at your own risk, bridge might be down. What are you doing? Call your mom before you come here. They want you to be careful, and which is not a bad thing. A lot of times I figured that's a beautiful road, it's level, it's flat, it looks great, let's go. So sometimes it doesn't really work out though. You drive quite a bit. This is Big Bend, Texas. It took me 3 hours to get here, and then road closed, got to turn around. And sometimes it's decommissioned. So it was a beautiful logging road at one point, but then they threw some rocks, or you run into situations where it's flooded out. That becomes a problem. Or you hit a snowpack in June, so you think, hey, June's a great time to go out, but all of a sudden you get stuck in the snow and you got to figure it out. And sometimes trees fall. So this is actually coming out of a place I camped. You can see by the stop sign, it's not too remote. I came in that way and I had to come out and the trees were down. So fortunately, I just brought out my trusty axe and went to town. So going back to saving the shoulders, if I had an axe that was this long and I tried to chop it, my shoulders would be raw. So everything just has a little bit of a adaptability. So for my situation, and Graham said I can't have a fire in here, so I'm not going to chop any wood. But I did get to town to it quite nicely. And sometimes it just doesn't flat out work well, meaning the road looks beautiful, I take it, I like what it sees, but then you get to something that's actually pretty ugly and looks more like a junkyard. So you're not just getting that beautiful sunset view sometimes, you just have to camp under Site C power hydro, right? So, and in that case, I just slept in my car because it just wasn't worth it to pull out the tent. But sometimes it does pay off quite well. And for me, even if it's 2 out of every 10 times, for me, it's worth it. So that's the Grand Canyon, and I can't actually hike down into the Grand Canyon for obvious reasons. So if I went to the South or North Rim, I'd be surrounded by 1,000 tourists because it's Disneyland. So I kind of had a rough idea of there's some off-road trails, and I figured, well, I'm going to take this one road because theoretically it goes towards the side of a canyon, and I had this whole area to myself. And it was for free, nobody came around, paid off quite well. And yeah, you get stuff like this where it's just jaw-dropping and it makes the whole day worth it. It does get a little frustrating when you've been driving for 6 hours and nothing comes of it, but when you do get something like this, it's very memorable. And this is called Movie Road. It's actually in California, a lot of movies filmed there. So anything like Planet of the Apes or old Westerns. And again, I just looked at the map book. I saw a nice looking ridge, which is the Sierra Nevadas, and I went there. And this is me getting out of the Death Valley. So it was 51.5 degrees when I was in Death Valley. I found a place to camp at an evening when it was a cool 45 degrees. I couldn't do it, so I tried to go higher elevation, and I think it was 38, which was practically air conditioning compared to 51. And of course, the biggest payoff of all is a nice sunset, nobody around, beautiful music, bottle of wine, and just enjoying your time. But it's not all views, wines, and sunsets. So if you've driven 150,000 kilometers like myself, it doesn't work out all the time. That's actually me getting stuck, and that is me getting towed on the next slide. So yes, I had to call 911 because there was no reception. As you can see, I'm not too far from the road. It was quite embarrassing because I couldn't just call a tow truck, so I called 911, and the operator right away said, "You're stuck in the desert, aren't you?" And she kind of knew it because a lot of tourists get stuck out there. So every now and then, I know within my limits, I'm in a chair, I can do a little walking with canes, but I can't get out in a lot of cases and help myself. So I try and find where that line is, push it, go to there, tip a toe over it, and just keep increasing that line. Usually it does work out well, but sometimes you get a situation like this. And this was the most recent tow, actually, less than a year ago. Another situation, no cell service. I had to wave at the road up above. Somebody had to save me. I almost lost my car, which was quite unfortunate. So this was Carpenter Lake out by Gold Bridge. I'm on a little island there. It's hard to see in the top left, but the kindness of strangers on the road above. Car came past me. I woke up. So Friday I came up, the whole area is dry. People are ripping on ATVs. Sunday I get in my car and I go to leave and I'm on a little island. So I wave at a passing car up there and they wave back at me. They kept going. So 20 minutes later, I pull my chair out. And then when another car comes by, I point at the chair and wave. So they figured, okay, maybe this person does need help. And I told them to go to the closest town, pull a tow truck driver. And the kindness of stranger, the tow truck driver, his son and his son's girlfriend got all the cable in town and pulled me up. So I went from being stuck in the mud to water being at my door in 2 hours. And the guy said another 3 or 4 days, my vehicle would be fully submerged. So I got very lucky and had to rely on the kindness of strangers. And of course, the flats. So I've had 13 flats. I've had to change most of them myself. First flat, I think it was 35, 40 minutes. And now I can change one in 13. I've gotten pretty good. I'm not the strongest person, but I use leverage. I use things like the back of a hammer to undo the screw lug nuts and everything like that. Practice makes perfect. When I got this job, I worked for Spinal Cord Injury BC. How I celebrated was to go up to the Alaska Highway in November and look at the Northern Lights. So it got to -12. I slept in my vehicle, wake up the next morning, and there's a flat on my tire. So I was in no position to be changing it in that cold. So I rode on what little air I had left to the closest town, woke them up, and they were nice enough to change my tire for me. Now with modern vehicles and technology comes modern problems. So that last vehicle you saw was nice. This vehicle, it's more comfortable, but it's got, as you can see, like the nice navigation screen. So with my old vehicle, whenever I'd hear a weird noise or something was going on, I'd just turn my music up, ignore it, worry about it later. Now I got blinking lights, I got things going off in my dash, and it's very nerve-wracking. So what you see here is I had 3 tires were low on air. Top left, I'm 200 kilometers to the closest town, which does not seem like a far distance. Might seem like it's 2 hours, but it was actually almost a 6-hour drive because I was up in the Alaskan oil fields going to the Arctic Ocean, and that's a very rough road, so I couldn't just drive 100 kilometers down it. So very nerve-wracking. Barely any vehicles came by. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just rolled into town. I stunk because I was sweating with nerves the whole time, just rubbing my dash, saying, please get me there. But I survived, and that was the payoff of that trip. And of course, I've had transmissions, faulty electronic brakes, and then most recently, I was up in the Yukon, and I had engine coolant leak. And they make fun of you up north when you drive a Volkswagen or a non-North American vehicle. You go into a small town like Dawson City, and they're saying, well, what are you doing driving a European vehicle? You need a domestic truck for us to fix you up. So, but it worked out well. And that's me trying to play mechanic. I have no idea what I'm doing. I just put my hand down. I'm like, oh, self-diagnosing. Doesn't always work out. And all those little specks you can see, those are just bugs hitting your car. That's a stake I ran over. So one time I was camping. I don't know if I shouldn't have been there, but someone threatened to hit me with a rock, and then they came back in my camp, and I reached for my axe and my pepper spray just to be safe, and I bumped over my steak and ran over it. So sometimes you run into some weird people too. And then I accidentally nicked my finger off once too with this same axe. So mosquito in the eye, and took a little bit of the digit off, and I had to drive an hour and a half to town. And the gentleman there, this is in the Yukon, said, "Oh, one of those." And I thought, oh, it's gonna be bad. And he said, nope, 4 or 5 stitches later, and I was good to go. It hurt. I whinged for quite a bit, and I still a little numb in the finger, but I decided to include this. I know it kind of makes me look foolish, but it humbled me, and it kind of reminded me, you know what, you're in nature, you need to respect nature. Can't get complacent. You got to respect that there's bears around, that something bad can happen. You need to have your wits about you. So it humbled me in a good way. I was getting too comfortable and too relaxing, which is what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger, except for bears, they will kill you. And snakes. I don't like snakes. Snakes are my biggest enemy. They really scare me. They freak me out more than anything. I just can't stand them. So how do I defend my camp, whether it's snakes, bears, or anything like that? So that's a big part of it. Music. On your left, the speaker. You saw that snake. A snake comes into my camp. I put my speaker on the ground, and the vibrations actually scare away the snakes. So that takes care of that. It won't do anything for the scorpions. They're stupid. They stay put. That helps a lot. I need bear spray. I put it on the side of my chair right here, so a bear does come into camp. I don't have to fumble. I could just grab it, lift it up. I'm good to go. You want to be prepared. When I nicked my finger, I knew where my medical equipment was. It was right inside my vehicle. I didn't have to fumble for it. So you want to know where these things are in case of panicking. You don't want to be freaking out. And there's a harmonica there. Noise. Noise is the biggest thing. Creating noise in the bush helps you out a lot. I recently bought a firearm because I had somebody up in the Northwest Territories say I was not respecting where they lived because I was in the middle of nowhere in grizzly territory, and I should have something to defend myself. I had a lot of people give me grief in northern BC, the Yukon, saying I was crazy to not have a shotgun in camp. So I thought they were safe, or I thought they were right, and I just have one just to be safe. I don't always travel with it, but going back to respecting where I am, and I don't want to make the news, so that's why I have something like that. So investing in an attitude changer. It's easy when you're on the road, you haven't showered for 10 days, you're exhausted. Part of that is thrilling, but it's easy to kind of get discouraged when it's been raining for a week, or you're tired, mosquitoes are biting you. So it's the little things that make life much more enjoyable. So not just eating a can of beans or a can of soup, but actually making a proper meal is a big one. Cleaning your vehicle, that sounds like, how would that be rejuvenating? But actually cleaning your vehicle, washing the bugs off of it, cleaning yourself up with some water, just the little things that make life a lot more enjoyable. I drink better coffee I do when I camp when I do at home. So I have the best coffee, percolators, French press, you name it. So nothing lifts the spirits up more than just enjoying the finer things in life. My mom and dad were very upset because I missed Thanksgiving once when I was all alone, but I was in the Redwoods National Park and had my own Thanksgiving. So bought a couple little mini pumpkins, some wine, and just made the most of it. So again, it's just not just camping, but it's kind of having the full-on experience. And why not pick a little bouquet, put it in an empty bottle, some water, and drive around with it just to make things a little more enjoyable. So that's it for the main portion. I will take some questions. Yeah, this is me. So I didn't want to scare people with a lot of those like, hey, I get stuck, I've nicked a little finger, I got bears in my camp. This is 95% of it, is really enjoying it. And I get some people say, well, you got arms, you can do this, you can do that. With my mobility or my situation, I can't get out to a place like that, I can't do that. If you have a support network, even a basic one, it is really easy to actually get out to a lot of these places. I've been on the Arizona-Mexico border by myself, and I see a van ripping down, I think they're coming after me, and they continue driving on, and they park, awning comes out, lift comes down, power chair comes out, family camps for the night. So if you do have a little bit of support, it does become a lot easier. And it's all about making life simpler. So I got the pop-up tent, I got the shortened axe, I got the scarves to protect against the sun, the wind, the mosquitoes, you name it. I got everything in little packs. So what's good about this is I might have my camp set out and all of a sudden the rain comes and I gotta get out of town quickly, meaning getting back in my vehicle. So instead of having everything spread out, I got these little bags that takes care of everything. So I got a bag for cooking, a bag for fire, bag for coffee. So in here, you got the UV glove. What's good about the UV glove is you can see I got a small fire. When you're traveling and you got wood, you can't have these grand bonfires. You need to really preserve the wood you have. So what I like about an UV glove, I can stick in, grab a log, rearrange it to make the most out of it. Fire starter, so little chunk of this. I've been driving 6 hours. I'm too lazy to make kindling. I could just light a chunk of this and throw some medium light logs on. I'm good to go. Of course, you got the tongs. Again, easy for grabbing logs and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just all about easy, practical things that aren't going to break the bank and just make life a little better. And I got a cooler that never leaves because it's pretty heavy if you got water in it. So rather than wreck my shoulders lifting a cooler out, when I'm at a gas station, I'll just put one in here, suck the other, and drain the water out. And I kind of look pretty greasy at gas stations because I come out of the bush, I'm putting all my garbage out, I got cooler water pouring out, cleaning the bugs off the windshield, I'm wiping water on myself. It's not a good scene, but it's very rejuvenating, and yeah, I like it. So that's it for the main portion of the slides. Did anybody have any questions? Yes. How do I shower? That's a good one. I don't really. So I got. So that's a good point. I do have those days where every week, so I'll sometimes go on a month trip, and I will every 6 to 7 days need to get a hotel, which is kind of like just a reset. I clean my car, I get a proper night's sleep, I do have a proper shower. But in the meantime, like when I go in the desert or I go anywhere else, I use just jugs of water. I got large baby wipes. I sit on the edge of my chair and kind of just take my clothes off and then just do exactly what it sounds like. I've had people walk up with their dogs on me when I'm naked in my chair going like this, and it wasn't a good look, but I waved, they waved, and we exchanged pleasantries, and just goes to show that you're not alone sometimes when you think you are. So I do that. That's a big one. I got like shampoo in a can, so you kind of spray it. It's called shampoo in a can, so it's like dry shampoo, which takes the grease out of the hair. That's why I like going to the desert, though. The air is really good, so you're not oily. When you go up north and you got like mosquito spray and the air is damp, you get pretty smelly. But that's sort of how I shower. I will, if once a week, if the weather's bad or I'm just really exhausted, I'll go and get a hotel just to kind of figure things out and get a proper meal, right? I'll always have, going back to like my 5-day rule, I'll always have like a week's worth of food on hand. But I got 2 coolers. I got a hard cooler for like drinks, water, maybe a couple soda pops, and ice, yeah, and that ice will carry me a few days, 3-4 days. And I got a soft cooler, so I'll have like proper food in there too. Before I go into an area or the bush, there's usually a corner store or a gas station I can stock up before I go in. Yeah. Any other questions? When I showed the map? Yeah. The middle was, so each province, state, whatever, it was like a Yukon, road condition Yukon thing. So it does name it, you're in Idaho, like I'll have that in my phone before I go. So if I know what states, provinces, or territories I'm going in, I'll program the apps into my phone before I leave while I'm here. And that way when I go there, I know, oh, I got 1 bar, I'll hit that app open and it'll pop up. So it's just making life a lot easier. So Drive BC is a very good one. There's like the 4x4 Association of BC. Backroads Mapbooks is great. All Trails, Sites and Trails BC is a good one for giving updates. When the province goes in and clears out a recreation site, they'll give what the road conditions are like. Yeah. I saw a hand go up. Yeah. Yeah, were you my case manager when I got my camera? So I did get a camera, and yeah, a lot of these photos, so people say, hey, camp by yourself. Who's taking the photo of you? It doesn't make any sense. So I do have a tripod, a camera, I got all the appropriate gear, and that's part of it, is just enjoying taking photos. So I'll set the self timer up, and I'll take about 15 photos and pick the one which I think I look the most stoic in and go with that. But I've always enjoyed that aspect of it, and people say, like, what do you do to pass time? It's like, setting up camp takes a lot of time. I'll listen to music, play harmonica, play cards, I write a lot of letters, but also photography. So kind of trying to enjoy what I do in the city, in my everyday life, and how can I incorporate that in my camping trip? And people really enjoy my photos, so yeah. Any other questions? I play everything, so it depends on where I am, what the weather's like, will depend on the genre. So yeah, I play rock, blues, soul, you name it, yeah.
What blues do you play?
Anything, key of A to key of D, yeah. Any other questions? I do get asked a lot how to use the washroom, that's a big one. My first trip, I built myself a commode out of wood, Tetra wood shop. And it was amazing. I took a lot of care into it, but at the end of the trip, I threw it into a bonfire because I was out of wood, foolishly. They do make commodes that you can buy for really cheap, but I just do a hold on to the door handle and pop a squat and bury it if I can, if there's no pit toilets around. It's pretty crude and basic, but that's how I get around to it. Yeah, I'll bury it if it's not hard rock, and yeah. Try and leave no trace, so I don't want people to know I'm there. They're gonna know about my wheelchair marks that chews up the ground quite good. It looks like a herd of whatever bison came through when the wheels are zigzagging around. But everything from brushing your teeth, I try and spit it back into a bottle. I just try and leave no trace when I can. When I'm at places like you saw that last photo where I'm in the desert, it used to be where you could have a fire on the desert, but now they don't want you scorching the ground. So I do have like an elevated fire pit that can fold up nicely. So going back to just nobody needs to know I was there. We have to wrap up. Thanks for coming, everybody. If anybody has any specific questions about camping in BC, anything, you want good recommendations, good spots, come to me. I'll give you my business card.
My name is Ari, and that is Carmel.
Hello, everyone.
And we're from an organization called Pain BC. So first off, we'd like to acknowledge that Pain BC's offices are located on the traditional, unceded, and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. That's us. And we just want to let you know that we're both employees of Pain BC, and many of Pain BC's programs are funded in whole or part by the province of British Columbia. So what are we going to talk about today? So we just, in the next 20 minutes or so, here's our agenda of things that we're going to cover. So first, we're going to learn what chronic pain is. This might not be news to some of you. We're going to learn about the impacts of untreated chronic pain. We'll review some pain management strategies. And then we'll talk about what Pain BC is and what are some of the free programs and services that are available to you. So first off, what is chronic pain? To begin, we have a short video, which I'm hoping will work with the audio here. This will go over, can we play the video? Should be in the PowerPoint slide. If not, that's okay. Okay, no problem. we have a lot of the same information on the next slide. Okay, so I'm assuming everybody here knows what pain is. You step on something sharp, it hurts. So the organization we work for focuses on chronic pain. And the definition of chronic pain is usually pain that lasts for more than 3 months after a surgery or illness or surgery, illness, or what is the last one I'm missing? Or trauma. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so it could be pain that doesn't go away or that keeps coming back. It can be related to a condition like fibromyalgia or multiple sclerosis or arthritis, or it can also be its own condition. Recently, pain was acknowledged by the World Health Organization as its own disease. And it, like I said, it can be its own condition, and chronic pain happens when our nervous system, which is the system within our body that allows us to perceive the world, becomes sensitized. And basically that means that it's sending out pain signals, which are kind of like danger signals, all of the time, even if there's nothing necessarily painful or dangerous around us. So here are some facts about chronic pain. Some of these may not be news to you. So roughly 1 in 4 people in Canada live with chronic pain. So it's a really big proportion of the population. And it's no surprise that pain is actually the most common reason for seeking healthcare. And it's associated with the worst quality of life compared with other chronic diseases for a myriad of reasons. And although pain is really common, we hear all the time that many people with pain struggle to find adequate pain care or find that their pain is dismissed by either family or friends or even their healthcare providers who tell them that it's not real. And this is even worse for marginalized folks, such as disabled folks or Indigenous folks or LGBTQ folks. So as anyone who has pain can tell you, pain is more than just physical. It's something that can impact every aspect of our lives. So we use something what's called the biopsychosocial model. And that refers to how pain can impact both our bodies, so our health, our well-being, but also psychologically, so our mental health, our spiritual health, whether that be within kind of a religion or a connection to nature, how we see ourselves, and then socially as well, our connection to our communities and our culture. And unfortunately, what can happen sometimes is that pain can become the center of a person's life. So we have this diagram, which we call the pain spiral, and this is attempting to illustrate what can happen for some people where pain becomes the center of their worlds and every decision that they make becomes about, am I going to have pain when I do that? Or am I not going to have pain? And that can become extremely limiting. But we have good news, and now it's over to Carmel.
Thank you, Ari. I'll take that from you. Wonderful. So we're going to be talking a little bit about pain management next. So there are multiple paths to wellness that one can approach when going through pain management. There are approaches that are social, getting people reconnected with their communities. There's spiritual, whether that is, again, religious or being in touch with nature. There's the psychological, whether that's mental health supports or seeking psychiatry. And physical, which can come up to gentle movements, integrating physiotherapy, things like that into your wellness. And there's also lots of things that you can do yourself. So the pillar for treatment of pain, we have the medical management, which would be in connection with healthcare providers. Next would be rehabilitation therapies, which include physiotherapy, acupuncture, and massage therapy. Psychosocial therapies, which can include support groups, seeing a counselor or a psychologist, things like that, and supported self-management, which is, of course, like it says, managing your own pain and managing your own symptoms. So supported self-management, in addition to working with a healthcare team, people with pain can have supported self-management. Some self-management strategies for pain include gentle movement and exercise, getting a good night's sleep, breathing, relaxation, connecting with friends, family, and community, as well as identifying one's values and what's important in life. Might need to do next slide. I think it's not working. Awesome. So when we showed you guys the pain spiral earlier, we were wanting to kind of change that from a pain-centered life to a more balanced life. So the ways that we can do that, which are up and down, it's not a linear path, is the acceptance, being able to manage pain, getting informed about pain through pain education, and deciding to move forward. Increased activity, which could be practicing relaxation techniques, learning about paced activity, and just moving again. And even things like earlier when we had the chair yoga is a really good way to show how we can increase activity when living with pain. Improve social functioning, so improving confidence, enjoying time with friends and family, and building a connection to a community of other people living with chronic pain, which is something I'll go into in detail a little bit after. And improve motivation, so persisting and overcoming challenges and staying motivated to continue towards that path of a balanced life and get out of that pain spiral. I don't know if our video is going to work. We do have a video up next of Desmond talking about self-management. I don't know if that's going to work though. That's a no. Okay. So we're going to be moving forward now, talking about some of our pain-specific services at Pain BC. Next slide, please. All right, so part 3, Pain BC resources for people living with pain. So my role at Pain BC is that I'm a lead in support services. So I help oversee and work in the programs that I'm going to tell you about. So I know a lot more about those guys. Next slide, please. So our vision is a future where no one is alone with pain. And our mission is to enhance the well-being of all people living with pain through empowerment, care, education, and innovation. So what we do, we prevent persistent pain and intervene early to reduce its impacts. We foster research on pain and pain-related disability. We combat stigma and its negative effects. We empower people living with pain to enhance well-being. We educate healthcare providers to better assess and manage their pain and improve systems that impact people with pain in community and society. So these are our support services that we provide at Pain BC for people living with pain. Live Plan B and Live Plan B Plus are online self-management tools that you can use to help yourself with pain management at home. The difference between Live Plan B and Live Plan B Plus is Live Plan B is basically like a library, whereas Live Plan B Plus is a little bit more like a curated section of the library that's kind of more catered to you based on self-assessment at the beginning of signing up for it. The Pain Support Line is a telephone support service available 5 days a week from 9 to 4. It's staffed by myself and other social workers, and we're here to provide a listening ear for people living with chronic pain and also to kind of send you guys in the right direction in regards to different resources that you might need in your area. So for example, one of the most common things people call us about is asking for a GP in their area or if they can get some more information about a pain clinic in their health region. Making Sense of Pain is another program that we offer that helps specifically with marginalized communities. As we know that people living in marginalized communities have more increased pain. The Gentle Movement at Home is something that we brought on during COVID, and that's a video series where we have gentle movements that you guys can check out at home. It's a YouTube channel. The Pain Support and Wellness Groups, which is my program, it's my baby. The Pain Support and Wellness Groups is a twice-a-month program running all across BC over Zoom. We have multiple groups, about 9 groups that run twice a month in the morning and evening, and those groups are where people living with pain can come together and collaborate and talk about different pain management strategies, and those are facilitated by a volunteer that also lives with pain and provides some educational information about chronic pain. And lastly is our Coaching for Health program. The Coaching for Health program is a telephone coaching program which provides one-on-one support between a trained volunteer and a person living with pain. It's a 12-week telephone service, and that is one of our only programs that is available only through healthcare professional referral. All of our other programs are available online and for free. Like I said, Live Plan B, a couple things about them. So a free online educational resource to learn and manage your pain. Live Plan B is for you if you want to browse our library at your own pace. There are specific tools which interest you. Lift Plan B Plus is more for you if you're interested in a guided pain education program and if you would like an interactive learning experience. Oh yeah, I kind of went all over with all of this when I jumped the gun. But like I said, we also respond to inquiries from healthcare professionals and other organizations. Outcomes for living individuals accessing the pain support line may include feeling validated and empowered by receiving information about appropriate resources in their area, as well as being heard. This is just some stats for you guys. So we had a total of over 2,500 communications in the year of 2021 and 546 new callers with 111 returning callers. And from one of our clients that had accessed it, for the longest time, I needed help, but I wasn't sure if it was available. The pain support line gave me the motivation to say, you needed the help and you should ask for it. Once again, the Coaching for Health program. In this program, you get matched up with a trained volunteer coach and have 12 free one-on-one coaching telephone sessions to talk about your pain and your wellness goals. It is a goal-oriented program. That went, I don't know, it went all the way back. Okay, I don't know what's going on. Maybe, there we go, that's it. So those are the kind of pillars of the Coaching for Health program, is learning about self-management of your chronic pain, regaining function, and improving well-being. We had a total of 150 referrals from healthcare providers in 2021, and another testimony of, since speaking with the Pain BC's coach on a regular basis, I have regained my confidence, strength, and courage to believe in myself again. Coaching has helped me look past my pain. Next slide, please. Awesome. So once again, this is about the support groups facilitated by trained volunteers or also people living with pain, and a place where you can share your own coping strategies, learn about pain, and connect with other people. A lot of people feel very isolated, especially during COVID, and this has been a great avenue for people living with pain to safely reach out to other people in the chronic pain community. And all sessions are held over Zoom at this point. There we go. So yeah, number of group visits in 2021 was 1,607, with a total number of participants at 341. These strategic kind of outcomes are sharing coping strategies, learning about pain management, and building a community of support. And once again, talking about gentle movement, we have 37 videos with almost 30,000 views in 2020. These are all kind of catered to folks living with pain and are pain informed. And that's it. Any questions? For the Coaching for Health program? So all of the other programs, like our support groups and the pain support line, you can access on your own. The only program that requires a healthcare professional referral would be the Coaching for Health program. And it doesn't have to be a doctor. It can also be a nurse practitioner, and it can also be a social worker. Yes? We're currently actually working on a database right now. It is in the works, so it will be up and running hopefully soon. But for any sort of inquiries about local resources in your area, whether that be for healthcare professionals or other social supports, you can always give a call or an email to the pain support line, and we can kind of guide you in the right direction, just until we get that back up on the website.
Were there any other questions? We're happy to take questions about any of the things that we talked about, or just about Pain BC in general, or about chronic pain. That's a good question. Do we have doctors that we recommend?
Unfortunately, no. I wish we had a magic book of doctors that we could refer people to that were specialized in chronic pain. Unfortunately, there is no such thing. We just generally are able to recommend based on geographic location and accepting new patients. And because picking a general practitioner is such an individual experience, it's generally up to the person to set up that initial meeting with the GP and ensure that that's the right fit for them.
I will say, though, with the the database, there is, that we were talking about, there is a vetting process for healthcare providers to have their information added to that database. So one of the requirements is that they have to have gone through a certain amount of training in pain in order to be listed there. So it's not just anybody. It's somebody who is going to have at least some sort of background and education in chronic pain, so they know what they're doing, essentially. Totally, yeah. We hope so. So I work in the education department, and so a lot of what I do is focused on healthcare education. We certainly work with a lot of pain specialists. We were actually part of helping to set up the the pain specialty at the UBC School of Medicine. So for example, doctors, if they want, they can specialize in pain care. So we're connected via various networks, but always looking to.
Oh yeah, the pain specialists at St. Paul's know who we are. We're in cahoots with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we, I can say that we, at the pain support line, we have a lot of communications with a lot of the local pain clinics, especially the ones that are MSP funded. So St. Paul's Hospital would be the one for Vancouver Coastal Health Region. Yeah.
Any other questions? How much time do we have left? Maybe if we can go to the last slide, it has our contact information on it. We're also we have a table outside. I think it's number 26. So you can come by and pick up any of our brochures. We also have some candy to learn more about Pain BC. You can also sign up for our newsletter, which will give you monthly updates about anything that Pain BC is doing, as well as lots of opportunities for people living with pain, whether that's participating in research or giving your feedback about a program. We're all about engaging with our community and the folks who live with pain.
Yeah, and we also have opportunities for volunteering within our program, as we have volunteers and basically make our coaching and groups programs run. We wouldn't be able to do them without them. So if something like that seems interesting to you, there is ways to access that on our website.
Okay, thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
Okay, I have to be able to see my screen. Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for having us here today. We're the Family Support Institute of BC, and we are all about families supporting other families. And I want to recognize that we're coming to you from the unceded stolen territories of the Coast Salish peoples. And it's on this land that I live and learn. And I'm here every day learning something new and supporting our local Indigenous families. Okay. Let's try it. There we go. Okay. So who am I? This is me. This is my family. And my son is who brought me to FSI. My son is now 15, almost 16. His name is Silas, and he was born with a rare genetic disorder called Prader-Willi syndrome. And then he was also later diagnosed with autism. And when Silas was born, no one had ever heard of Prader-Willi. You probably haven't heard of Prader-Willi. It's a rare genetic disorder. It's about 1 in 15,000. And I didn't really have a lot of information, and I didn't have a lot of support. Medical professionals really didn't know a whole lot about it, and certainly family and friends didn't. So my first instinct was to reach out to other families who had been down the same road with his disorder. And through those families, I became involved with the BC Prader-Willi Syndrome Association, and then I was introduced to FSI. And I'd heard of FSI, over the years, but I'd never really used their resources. And I guess I would just say to you, if you're listening to this, that get involved with FSI as soon as you can, because I wish that I had done that. If I had been involved with them earlier, it really would have saved me a lot of grief because I just tried to figure stuff out on my own, do my own sort of research and navigation, and a lot of times I was pretty lost. And if I had contacted FSI, it would have been super helpful for me and for my son as well. And so we, do a lot of activities in BC in kind of modified ways, and one of them is camping, because we find camping gives us a lot of options and a lot of flexibility in what we can do. And so we've used a lot of the various recreational websites that are out there, and I only learned of those, again, through FSI. So we are a non-profit provincial organization. We are unique to BC and unique to Canada. And the core of what we do is a family-to-family peer support network. We're very grassroots. And we're very family first oriented organization. All of our supports and services are free, and you don't have to have a diagnosis to call, and we also don't have a wait list. So we really kind of came out of a time when families were not really well supported in communities. So it was about 30 years ago that FSI started. And it was a time where maybe families were being told to put their children in institutions, or perhaps their children were coming out of institutions into a society where there wasn't a lot of support. So families decided to come together and support each other, help each other navigate, help each other advocate, and figure out a better system, and they had wanted better outcomes for their own families. So we really believe that we, as each other supporting, we are the best people to find information. Families are the best way to navigate and to get information for each other. So we really believe that knowledge is power, and through that, giving people more capacity, giving them more information about how systems work is the best way that they'll be able to sort of navigate this life with a child with a disability. We support all ages, any disability, 0 to 100. And we do that through our network of volunteers. We have over close to 300 volunteers within our network throughout BC, and a family will come to us and we can then connect them with another family that lives with disability to help them navigate systems, and they are called our resource parents. These are the types of things that we offer at FSI, peer-to-peer support, any age, any disability. All of our supports and services are free. You don't have to have a diagnosis. We don't care about that piece of paper that says you've got autism or ADHD. We also offer a lot of online workshops and training, especially since COVID. We have workshops on things like RDSP, transition workshops, like say transitioning from preschool into kindergarten or out of high school into the adult years. There's lots of new information and a whole new system to navigate, and so we offer information sessions on how to navigate those new resources and information. We have lots of networking opportunities. Many people that volunteer with us find other organizations that are out there, and it's kind of increasing their own knowledge base. We're always looking for new volunteers. We're only as good as our little army that we have in place. So we are always welcoming new people to come on board, and the only really qualification is that you care and that you're willing to listen. And you don't really have to have any expertise in anything. Your own life experience, your lived experience is the most invaluable thing that you can provide for our parents. And of course, we do lots of information sharing and referral. We can give you referrals to other agencies. If we're not quite sure how to help you, we can always kind of lead you in the right direction. This is kind of how it works. So someone calls our organization or emails us, and we receive a support request. And we have an office staff that will kind of get the information of what the families are needing and figure out sort of a good starting point, because sometimes people come to us with like a whole basket of issues, a whole lot of, I don't know where to start. I'm really kind of, at my wit's end here. And so we kind of try and drill down and figure out what it is exactly that they're needing support with. And we can give them some resources right away. And then we can also connect them with another volunteer parent. Because everyone at FSI has a child with a disability, we are very accustomed to having balls dropped, having not getting phone calls back, not getting those emails returned. So we're really keen to make sure that that never happens at FSI. So we always want to make sure that you get those resources right away. And then we do a bit of matchmaking and connect people with another family. And this can be based on the diagnosis. This can be based on your region, ages, or any variety of things. Sometimes it might be someone that doesn't even live in Vancouver. They could be, in the north or even on the island, especially with online accessibility. People are a lot more comfortable with meeting via Zoom and that type of thing. So when you get a call back from a volunteer parent, they kind of help you just be a good listening ear, figure out some resources, give you maybe some suggestions. And it's, our families are the ones that we really get it, because we live it day to day. So we really understand what it's like to support another individual who's living with a, diverse ability. And so, families will tell you the real skinny, the things that maybe a social worker can't or doesn't know about, or the professionals in the field, don't always kind of give it to you straight, but families will for sure do that. And they'll also be able to sort of say what they used, what resources they used, what activity they did, and did it work? Was it great? Was it not so great? So you're not kind of just chasing, dead ends and, rabbit holes. This is when people would refer someone to FSI, someone that's just looking to connect with another family. Oftentimes families are feeling overwhelmed and just really struggling with day-to-day stuff, and we're really good ones, your first stop to figure out, how to get out of those loops of, feeling just overwhelmed. I think we all do that in life, but when you've got some extra layers, that you're trying to deal with, it makes it just so much more difficult. So being able to talk to someone else that really understands is, and it's always been invaluable for me, for sure. Going through transitions, of course, that's a time when you're kind of in an unknown land, having to figure out a whole new landscape. My son's just about 16, so we're looking at, those transitions into adulthood. And even though I'm in this position and I have a lot of resources, I still find it terrifying. So, being able to use FSI for myself is really invaluable. And of course, moving through systems. We are not a closed door. Anyone is welcome. If we're not quite the right fit, we've got information on lots of other resources that are out there for families. Just feeling heard and understood. When we bring volunteers on, we tell them we've got people from lots of different backgrounds and, religions and, social and cultural differences. So we really like to make sure that people feel that it's a welcome space, a safe place for them to connect with us. We're very non-judgmental, confidential, and you'll never meet a more compassionate, empathetic group of people than parents who have kids with disabilities. There's something that when you've gone through that fire, it's really just empowering and nice to be able to reach back and, give someone a hand and say, hey, I've been through that, I've done that, and don't make the mistakes I did. This is how to get better results, because they've had that lived experience. So that's what I've always found so helpful, is having those, experienced guides to tell me how it's going to work and to tell me that everything's going to be okay. Because sometimes you really just want to hear someone say it's going to be okay, or it's going to be okay-ish, as I like to say. Right? This is all of our contact information, of course. Let's see. There we go. These are the various things that we do. Of course, connecting, email, phone, in person. This third one, attending meetings, is a really valuable thing. So you could have someone from FSI come with you to a meeting, say it's an IEP meeting or a meeting with the ministry, and we can be there virtually or in person, and it's just really nice to have someone there just to take notes, just to be someone else, because I know, like when I'm in one of those meetings, especially with the school, or it's very intimidating. You're sitting on your side of the table and there can be 4 or 5 people on the other side, and they're all professionals and they do this all day long, and maybe this is your first time and you're feeling emotional, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling like this meeting is going to affect the trajectory of my child's life. It feels very, very heavy and important, and so it's hard to do that by yourself. Don't do that by yourself. Call FSI, have someone come to the meeting with you. Even if it's just to sit there and take those notes and, go over it before and go over it after and say, did you hear them say this? This is what I thought they said, just to clarify, am I crazy? Did they really say that? It's really helpful to have someone else there on your side of the table. So that's a really great resource that we offer to families. And of course, just, mentoring and coaching and just having someone to listen. Let's see. Okay, these are the impacts of our peer-to-peer support. These are things, especially that reduction in isolation during COVID. That's a really important thing for people, so you feel like you're not out there alone, being understood, getting some acceptance. Not all of our families, we don't all have natural resources. Maybe your family members don't get it, maybe they've got, their own sort of ideas of how to discipline your child, how to fix your child, and we don't do that, right? Because we've had that experience ourselves. Having that connection and empowerment, and then having that culture of hope. My son learned to tie his shoes when he was 14, and most people would be like, really, 14? But it's a big deal, and so we get that. We get those small milestones that are so important to us that sometimes other people don't quite understand. And we're all about building capacity. We're all about getting people informed, figuring out, helping them figure out how they're going to be able to navigate that river. These are some of the issues. These are probably common in your own lives. You've probably, unfortunately, had to deal with some of these, education issues, housing, not a lot of options, not a lot of choices, no diagnosis can often mean no services. Kids going into care. So what we've done is we've created a lot of online Zoom support groups around many of these issues, and we offer those throughout the week. We have a Wednesday night is a behavior challenge group. We have a Sunday night dads group, groups around autism, groups around FASD. We have a families receiving nursing supports, and we do also have a families who have put their children in care, whether it's voluntary agreements or another agreement. So, these are all super sensitive topics. So we make sure that it's a safe place for people to come together and talk about things, brainstorm ideas, and get some support. This is one of our other resources, Find Support BC. This is a really great resource to bookmark. It's a database that lists all the different availabilities of services and options and resources that exist in BC. Super easy to navigate. I highly recommend that one. And My Booklet BC is another great resource. It's where you make your own personalized booklet on your child. So it's like making a brochure, and you can make 6 different versions. You can make them in different languages. You can put pictures of your child in there, and they're really great for EAs and substitutes and summer camp programs and all of that. So you can put all the most important information that you want to share with your team in one spot. And teachers love it too, because it's really easy for them to see. Yeah, so, call FSIBC at any time. We're available to support you and your family and anyone that lives with disability. So thanks. I guess we'll take questions if anyone has any questions. This is Carrie Cassidy. She's one of our fabulous resource parents. She's in Vancouver, and she supports families all the time throughout BC. So she's here to join me and answer any questions and share any information she has.
Not sure. How do I work the mic?
Is it on?
It's on. Okay. Not a lot of questions, but similar to Heather, I found FSI about 7 years ago. Come closer to the mic. Yes, got it. I came to FSI 7 years ago. I have 3 children. 2 are on the autism spectrum. One has intellectual disabilities. I was kind of lost, and I came to FSI, and it was like I found a family. I had a place to belong. So I think that's one of the really important things that FSI provides, is just that connection and a place to start.
Yeah, that's totally what it was like for me too, because I was, feeling just really out of my element. Like, you look around the playground and all the kids, you can't help but compare, your own child, and you're like, my child, we're the odd duck here, and so you're just looking like, where's my tribe? Where are the people that are, like our family and who can totally get it? And so that's what FSI does so well. And yeah, and a lot of people who come to us for support end up becoming volunteers because they see the value of that, network and that sharing information and, just sharing your worries. And if you are a volunteer, we also do a retreat every year up at Manning Park, and that's a really fabulous opportunity to meet other parents, and then also to meet some of the different service providers and stakeholders like MCFD and CLBC and various ministries that kind of share information about what they do and how they work, because it's complicated. There's almost too many resources to navigate, and you only have like so much bandwidth, to be able to figure things out. And so you just go, well, I don't know, should I spend a lot of time trying to get respite, or is that like a dead end? Will that not even work? Or how do I get it? What are the words I can use, to open those doors and get things moving? So that's what I have found so helpful from other parents.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you mentioned the training weekend for the resource parents. It's amazing. This year we didn't have in-person training. Actually, the last 2 years we've been doing online training, and the quality of the training we get is absolutely amazing. It's helped me so much, not just as a resource parent, but it's helped me in my other career as well. Can I tell a little bit about being a resource parent?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I've been a resource parent for 7 years, and love the training, but it's really rewarding as well to work with families, and it's really rewarding that we don't have that wait list. I might get an email with a referral of, can you do this? And I answer within the day, and usually there is an electronic introduction done within the next 24 hours, and then I meet with the parents whenever I can. And the calls, they could be anything. The calls can be like, have you used consultants XYZ? What did you think of them? All the way up to a longer term, I'm supporting you through this transition, and these are the steps, and we're going to talk every second day for a couple of weeks or months. Or so the scope of what the resource parents do it's huge. It can be 5 minutes to almost forever relationships, because I do have some parents I'm still connected with.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of our resource parents as well are bilingual. So we're trying to, of course, always expand that network. But we've got resource parents that speak Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, Punjabi, French, Japanese. And that's where we're always trying to bring on board more parents, so we can, reflect the diversity that's out there, because there's definitely a need for that. To have those other languages available. But yeah, lots of different backgrounds from our resource parents. And I would say also, like you were saying, that it helps you professionally, because I think eventually, sometimes, when you have a child with a disability and they're born, it can really kind of put you off the rails, with your job, or sort of what you thought your professional life might look like. So being involved with this network, I think, is helpful. I think a lot of parents do end up gravitating towards the field. And so being connected with people this way can get you a job, right? Like, I started off as a volunteer, and now look at me, I have a job with FSI. So, there's opportunities there for people, especially for women. And not to leave dads out either, because we do have dads groups that meet online. But yeah, it's an opportunity not just to give back, but also to receive information, to receive training, and then just to meet other people that work in BC. Because it's good to know names, right? It's good to know names and faces when you're trying to move mountains with things. So that's what I have also found really super helpful. Oh, question? To give support to Yeah, well, like, for sure, our online, things that we do, whether it's like a Zoom support group or an informational workshop, like, anyone is welcome to join those. They're free, they're open to anybody. So yeah, for sure. Like, and we have a lot of free resources available through our website. Yeah. You could definitely do that. I think if someone called us from China, I mean, like I said, we're an open door, right? We wouldn't say no, but, we would definitely try and help them in some way, because we do have information about other organizations that, might be able to provide some support. So, and if we don't have the answer, we'll probably figure it out, right? They're pretty tenacious. Like, I don't think we ever want to, get an answer, get a question that we can't answer. So, yeah.
You're making me think of the regional part, because there is volunteers across BC. We haven't gone across Canada, a little bit into Alberta, right?
Yeah, sometimes we get calls, from people in Alberta. Yeah.
One of the nice things is the resources are local. So I live in Vancouver. I get Vancouver families, and I can share Vancouver resources. And somebody living up north would know the northern resources better.
Yeah.
And whenever we have a question that one of us can't answer, we almost have like a little hive, and we message each other and go, XYZ is happening, and I've never experienced this before. And then there's a bunch of responses. I know X, I know Y, I know Z.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're connected that way as well.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes we might get a call from someone that lives, in a rather small remote community, and they want to connect with someone that isn't in their community, right? Because they're like, I live in a small place. Like, I don't want everybody knowing my business. Can I, you kind of need to, sometimes find people out, adjacent to your area, so you can, have a sense of privacy, and, or maybe you work within a particular industry and you want to make sure that, you have a safe place and a safe person to connect with that, isn't going to be more privy to some of your personal details. So we're really, we really want to make sure that it's confidential and safe place for people to find some support. Okay, any more questions? That's good. Okay, thanks so much for having us.